Nihongi, The Chronicles of Japan, Chapter 5. The Emperor Mimaki, Ayaribya Is Niwai. The Emperor Mimaki, Iri, Biko, I was the second child of the Emperor Waka Yamato Niko, Hiko. Oho, hi. His mother name was Ika Shiko, daughter of Ohohi. So, Kaino Mikoto, the ancestor of the Mononobe house. The emperor was created Prince Imperial at the age of 19. He was of a quick intelligence, and in his boyhood was fond of manly devices. When he grew up to manhood, he was of wide culture and circumspect in his behavior. He honored profoundly the gods of heaven and earth. His mind was constantly directed to the management of the celestial institution. The Emperor Waka Yamato Niko, Hiko, Oho Hihai died in summer, the 4th month of the 60th year of his reign. BC 97. First year, spring, 1st month, 13th day. The Prince Imperial assumed the imperial dignity. He honored the Empress with the title of Grand Empress. 2nd month, 16th day. Mimaki, Haim was appointed Empress. Before this, she had given birth to the Emperor Ikumi, Iri, Hiko, I Sach, Kuni Kata, Haim no Mikoto, Chichai, Suku Yamato, Haim no Mikoto, Yamato, Hiko no Mikoto, and Ikatsuru, Hiko no Mikoto. By a concubine, Tohatsu Ayuma Kiwashi, Haim, daughter of Araka, the toe of the land of Ki, he had Toyo, Suki, Iri, Hiko no Mikoto, and a subordinate concubine named Ohari no Oho, Ama. One version has Yasaka Furu Ama Iro, daughter of Oho Yumi no Sukyun. Bore to him Yasaka Iri, Hiko no Mikoto, Nanaki, Iri Baim no Mikoto, and Toho, Kai Nai Iri Baim no Mikoto. This year was the year Kanoi sorrow of the cycle. BC 95. 3rd year, autumn, 9th month. The capital was removed to Shiki. It was called the Palace of Mizugaki. BC 94. 4th year, winter, 10th month, 13th day. The emperor issued a decree saying, when our imperial ancestors gloriously assumed the supreme rank, was it for the benefit of themselves alone? It was doubtless in order that they might thereby shepherd men and spirits and regulate the empire. Therefore it was that from generation to generation they were able to extend their unfathomable merit, and in their day to spread abroad their perfect virtue. We, having now received at their hands the mighty inheritance, lovingly nourish our good subjects. In so doing, let us follow obediently in the footsteps of our imperial ancestors, and long preserve the unbounded felicity. And ye too, our ministers and functionaries, should you not operate with all loyalty in giving peace to the empire. BC 93. 5th year. There was much pestilence throughout the country, and more than 1/2 the people died. BC 92. 6th year. The people took to vagabondage, and there was rebellion, the violence of which was such that by worth alone it could not be assuaged. Therefore, rising early in the morning and being full of awe until the evening, the emperor requested punishment of the gods of heaven and earth. Before this, the 2 gods Ama, Terasu no Oho, Kami, and Yamato no Oho, Kuni, Dama were worshipped together within the emperor Great Hall. He dreaded, however, the power of these gods, and did not feel secure in their dwelling together. Therefore he entrusted Ama Terasu no Oho, Kami to Toyo, Suki, Iri, Baim no Mikoto to be worshipped at the village of Kasanuhi in Yamato, where he established the sacred enclosure of Shiki. Moreover, he entrusted Yamato, Oho, Kuni Dama no Kami to Nanaki, Iri, Baim no Mikoto to be worshipped. But Nanaki, Iri, Baim no Mikoto was bald and lean, and therefore unfit to perform the rites of worship. BC 91. 7th year, spring, 2nd month, 15th day. The emperor decreed as follows. Of old our imperial ancestors greatly extended the vast foundation, and under the later emperors the institution became more and more exalted. The royal influence spread and flourished. But now that it has devolved upon us, numerous calamities have unexpectedly befallen it. It is to be feared that from the absence of good government in the court, we have incurred the blame of the gods of heaven and earth. Would it not be well to commit the matter to the sacred tortoise, and thereby ascertain the cause of the calamity? Accordingly, the emperor hereupon proceeded to the plain of Kami, Asachi, where he assembled the 80 myriads of deities and inquired of them by means of divination. At this time the gods inspired Yamato, Hai Momoso, Haim no Mikoto to say as follows. Why is the emperor grieved at the disordered state of the country? If he duly did us reverent worship, it would assuredly become pacified of itself. The emperor inquired, saying, What god is it that thus instructs me? The answer was, I am the god who dwells within the borders of the land of Yamato, and my name is Oho Mano Nashi no Kami. Now, having obtained this divine message, the emperor worshipped as he was told, but without effect. Then, having bathed and practiced abstinence, and purified the interior of the hall, he prayed, saying, Is our observance of due ceremonies towards the gods not yet complete? This non-acceptance is cruel. We pray that we may be further instructed in a dream, and the divine favor thereby consummated. That night he had a dream. A man of noble appearance stood opposite to him in the door of the hall, and announcing himself as Oho Mano Nashi no Kami, said, Let the emperor grieve no more for the disorder of the country. This is my will. If thou wilt cause me to be worshipped by my child, Oho Tada, Nico, then will there be peace at once. Moreover, the lands beyond the sea will of their own accord render submission. Autumn, 8th month, 7th day. Ache be appointed master of the worship of Yamato no Oho, Kuni, Dama no Kami. Then assuredly, the empire will have profound peace. The emperor, when he learned the words of the dream, was more and more delighted in his heart. By a proclamation to the empire, he sought for Oho Tada Nico, who was accordingly found in the village of Sūi in the district of Chinu, and sent to the emperor, who forthwith proceeded in person to the plain of Kami, Asachi, and assembled all the princes and ministers and the 80B. He then inquired of Oho Tada Nico, saying, Whose child art thou? He answered and said, My father name is Oho Mano Nashi no Oho Kami. My mother name is Ikudama Yori Baim, daughter of Suitsumimi, also called Kushi, Hai Kata Aim Hai Kata, daughter of Take Chinutsumi. The emperor said, Now we shall be prosperous. So he ascertained by divination that it would be lucky to send Ika Shiko, woe to distribute offerings to the gods. He also divined that it would be unlucky to take advantage of this opportunity to worship other gods. 11th month, 8th day. The emperor took the articles for the worship of the gods which he ordered Ika Shiko, woe to have made by the hands of the 80 Mononobe, and appointed Oho Tada Nico master of the worship of Oho Mano Nashi no Oho Kami. Moreover, he made Nagyachi master of the worship of Yamato no Oho Kuni Dama no Kami. After that, he divined that it would be lucky to worship the other gods. So he took the opportunity of separately worshipping the assemblage of 80 myriads of deities. He also settled which were to be heavenly shrines and which earthly shrines, and allotted land and houses for the service of the gods. Thereupon the pestilence first ceased. The country at length had peace, the 5 kinds of grain were produced, and the peasantry enjoyed abundance. BC 90. 8th year, summer, 4th month, 6th day. A man of the village of Takahashi, named Kyuhi, was appointed brewer to the great deity. Winter, 12th month, 20th day. The emperor caused Oho Tada Nico to worship the great deity. On this day, Kyuhi in person presented to the emperor sacred sake with a song as follows: "This sacred sake is not my sacred sake. T's sacred sake brewed by Oho, Mono Nushi of Yamato how long ago?" How long ago? Having thus sung, they feasted in the shrine of the god. As soon as the feast was over, the various high officials sang as follows: "The hall of Miwa, even its morning door we would go forth from, the door of the hall of Miwa." Hereupon the emperor sang as follows: "The hall of Miwa, even its morning door I would push open, the door of the hall of Miwa." So the door of the shrine of the god was thrown open, and the emperor proceeded on his way. He who was called Oho, Tada, Nikko was the first ancestor of the Kimi of Miwa. BC 89. 9th year, spring, 3rd month, 15th day. The emperor had a dream in which a divine person appeared to him and instructed him, saying, "Take 8 red shields and 8 red spears, and do worship to the god of Sumi, Zaka. Take moreover 8 black shields and 8 black spears, and do worship to the god of Oho, Zaka. Summer, 4th month, 16th day." In accordance with the instruction he had received in the dream, he worshipped the gods of Sumi, Zaka, and Oho, Zaka. BC 88. 10th year, autumn, 7th month, 24th day. He proclaimed to the company of ministers, saying, "For the guidance of the people, the chief thing is education. Now that I have performed due rites to the gods of heaven and earth, all calamity has become spent. The distant savages, however, do not receive our calendar because they are yet unaccustomed to the civilizing influences of our rule. We will, therefore, select some of our company of ministers and dispatch them to the 4 quarters so that they may cause our will to be known. 9th month, 9th day. The emperor sent Oho, Hiko no Mikoto to the northern region. He sent Takeru, Kahawake to the eastern sea. He sent Kibaitsu Hiko to the western road. He sent Tamba no Kai, Nushi no Mikoto to Tamba. On this occasion he addressed them, saying, "If there be any who do not receive our instructions, prepare war and smite them." Having said so, he granted them all alike seals and ribbons and appointed them generals. 27th day. Oho, Hiko no Mikoto arrived at the top of the Wani acclivity. Now there was there a maiden who sang as follows. One version has, "Oho, Hiko no Mikoto arrived at the Hira, Zaka acclivity in Yamashiro." Now there was by the road side a young woman who sang as follows. Ah, Prince Mamaki, Erie. Unaware that some are stealthily preparing to cut the thread of thine own life, thou amusest thyself like a lady. Another version is, unaware that some are preparing to slay thee on the watch at the great gate, thou amusest thyself like a lady. Wondering at this, Oho Hiko inquired of the maiden, saying, "What are these words that thou sayest?" She answered and said, "I was saying nothing, I was only singing." So she sang over again the above song and suddenly disappeared. Oho, Hiko accordingly returned and reported these circumstances to the emperor. Upon this Yamato to Haimomo so Baim no Mikoto, the emperor aunt by the father's side, a shrewd and intelligent person who could foresee the future, understood what was portended by this song, and told the emperor that it was a sign that Hani, Yasu, Hiko was about to plot treason against him. "I have heard," she said, "that Ada Baim Hani, Yasu Hiko wife, came secretly and took earth from Mount Kako in Yamato, which she wrapped in her neckerchief and prayed, saying, 'This earth represents the land of Yamato,' and turned it upside down. By this, I know that there will be troubles. If thou dost not speedily take measures, it will assuredly be too late." Hereupon he recalled all the generals and consulted with them. No long time after, Hani, Yasu, Hiko, and his wife Ada, Baim conspired to revolt and arrived suddenly with an army which they had raised. They came each by different roads, the husband by way of Yamashiro, the wife by Oho, Saka. They intended to join their forces and attack the capital. Then the emperor sent Isasuri, Hiko no Mikoto, to attack the force led by Ada, Bime. He accordingly intercepted it at Oho Saka and put it all to a great rout. Ada Bime was killed, and her troops were all slain. Afterwards he sent Oho, Hiko, and Hiko, Kuni, Fuku, the ancestor of the Wani no Omi, towards Yamashiro to attack Take, Hani, Yasu. Here they took sacred jars and planted them at the top of the acclivity of Takasuki and Wani. Then they advanced with their best troops and ascended Mount Nara and occupied it. Now when the imperial forces were encamping, they trod level the herbs and trees, whence that mountain was given the name of Mount Nara. Then abandoning Mount Nara, they proceeded as far as the river Wakara. Hani, Yasu, Hiko was encamped on both sides of the river, and the two armies challenged each other. Therefore the men of that time changed the name of the river, and called it the River Idomi, which is now corrupted into Idzumi. Hani, Yasu, Hiko, standing on the bank of this river, inquired of Hiko, Kuni, Fuku, saying, "Why hast thou raised an army and come hither?" He answered and said, "Thou, in opposition to heaven and regardless of right, dost intend to overturn the royal chamber. Therefore, I have raised a loyal army to punish thy revolt. This is the emperor command." Hereupon there was a struggle who should shoot first. Hani, Yasu, Hiko shot first at Hiko, Kuni, Fuku, but missed him. Then Hiko, Kuni, Fuku aimed at Hani, Yasu. Hiko hit him in the breast and killed him. His troops lost courage and retreated. They were consequently pursued and driven en route to the north of the river. More than half had their heads cut off, and of dead bodies there was a plentiful overflow. Therefore that place was named Hafu, Sono. Again the troops fled in fear, and their excrements were voided on their breeches. So they took off their armor and ran. Knowing that they could not escape, they bowed their heads to the ground and said, "Our Lord." Therefore the men of that time called the place where the armor was taken off Ka-wara, and the place where the breeches were defiled they called Kyuso. Bakama it is now called Kyusuba, which is a corruption of this word. Moreover, the place where they bowed their heads was called Gimme. After this Yamato Todo, Hai Momo, so Bime no Mikoto became the wife of Oho Mano, Nushi no Kami. This god, however, was never seen in the daytime, but came at night. Yamato Todo, Haim no Mikoto said to her husband, "As my lord is never seen in the daytime, I am unable to view his august countenance distinctly. I beseech him therefore to delay a while, that in the morning I may look upon the majesty of his beauty." The great god answered and said, "What thou sayest is clearly right. Tomorrow morning I will enter thy toilet, case and stay there. I pray thee be not alarmed at my form." Yamato, Todo, Haim no Mikoto wondered secretly in her heart at this. Waiting until daybreak, she looked into her toilet case. There was there a beautiful little snake, of the length and thickness of the cord of a garment. Thereupon she was frightened, and uttered an exclamation. The great god was ashamed, and changing suddenly into human form, spake to his wife and said, "Thou didst not contain thyself, but hast caused me shame. I will in my turn put thee to shame." So treading the great void, he ascended to Mount Mamaro. Hereupon Yamato, Haim no Mikoto looked up and had remorse. She flopped down on a seat, and with a chopstick, stabbed herself in the pudenda so that she died. She was buried at Oho Kai. Therefore the men of that time called her tomb the Hashi no Haka. This tomb was made by men in the daytime, and by gods at night. It was built of stones carried from Mount Oho, Saka. Now the people standing close to each other passed the stones from hand to hand, and thus transported them from the mountain to the tomb. The men of that time made a song about this, saying, "If one passed from hand to hand the rocks built up on Oho, Saka, how hard 'twould be to send them." Winter, 10th month, 1st day. The emperor gave command to his ministers, saying, "The rebels have now all yielded themselves to execution, and there is peace in the home district. But the savage tribes abroad continue to be tumultuous. Let the generals of the four roads now make haste to set out. On the 22nd day, the four generals set out on their journeys simultaneously. BC 87. 11th year, summer, 4th month, 28th day. The generals of the four roads reported to the emperor the circumstances of their pacification of the savages. This year, strange tribes came in great numbers, and there was tranquility throughout the land. BC 86. 12th year, spring, 3rd month, 11th day. The following decree was issued. Ever since we received the celestial dignity and undertook the guardianship of the ancestral shrines, our light has been subject to obscuration, and our influence has been wanting in placidity. Consequently, there has been disaccord in the action of the male and female principles of nature. Heat and cold have mixed their due order. Epidemic disease has been rife, and calamities have befallen the people. But now, in order to be absolved from our offenses and to rectify our errors, we have reverently worshipped the gods of heaven and earth. We have also dispensed our instructions, and thus pacified the savage tribes, and by force of arms have chastised those who refused submission. In this way, authority has been maintained, while below there are no retired people. Education is widespread. The multitude take delight in their industries. Strange tribes come employing several interpreters. The countries beyond the sea offer allegiance. At this time, we think it fit to make a new recension of the people, and to acquaint them with grades of seniority and the order of forced labor. Autumn, 9th month, 16th day. A census of the people was begun, and taxes were imposed anew. These are called the men bow, end tax, and the women finger, end tax. Therefore the gods of heaven and earth were harmonious. The wind and rain came in their season. The 100 kinds of grain formed duly. Families did not become extinct. Population was sufficient. Profound peace prevailed in the empire. Therefore he received the title of the emperor, the august founder of the country. BC 81. 17th year, autumn, 7th month, 1st day. The following decree was issued. Ships are of cardinal importance to the empire. At present, the people of the coast, not having ships, suffer grievously by land transport. Therefore, let every province be caused to have ships built. Winter, 10th month. The building of ships was begun. BC 50. 48th year, spring, 1st month, 10th day. The emperor gave command to Tsuyoki no Mikoto and Ikkyu no Mikoto, saying, "Ye, my two children, are alike in our affection, and we know not which of you to make our successor. Do each of you dream, and we will form an augury from your dreams." Hereupon the two princes, having received this command, performed their ablutions and prayed. In their sleep each of them had a dream. The emperor compared the dreams and spake to his two sons, saying, "The elder of you turned to the east only, and it is therefore meet that he should rule the eastern land. But the younger looked down generally over the four quarters, and he ought therefore to succeed to our dignity." Summer, 4th month, 19th day. Ikkyu no Mikoto was appointed Prince Imperial, and Tsuyoki no Mikoto was made ruler of the eastern land. He was the first ancestor of the Kimi of Kamitsuke and of the Kimi of Shimizuke. BC 38. 60th year, autumn, 7th month, 14th day. The emperor addressed his ministers, saying, "Take, hi, Teru no Mikoto." Another version is take, Hina Torai or Ama no, Hina Torai. Brought from heaven the divine treasures and stored them in the temple of the great god at Izumo. I wish to see them. Accordingly take Maro Sumi, the ancestor of Tile Yata, Bino Miyako, was sent for them, one writing says, also called Oho Maro Sumi, that he might lay them before the emperor. Now at this time, Izumo Furun, the ancestor of the Izumo no Omi, held charge of the divine treasures. He had gone to the land of Tsukashi and did not come to meet him. His younger brother, Iri, Ni, accordingly received the imperial command and entrusted them to his younger brother, Yumashi, Kara, Hisa, and his son Yuka Tsuku, Nu, and so rendered them up to the emperor. Now when Izumo Furun returned from Tsukashi and heard that the divine treasures had been rendered up to the court, he rebuked his younger brother Iri, Ni, saying, "Thou shouldst have waited for some days. What wert thou afraid of that thou didst so lightly part with the divine treasures?" On this account he still, after years and months had passed, cherished wrath against his younger brother and had a mind to slay him. So he deceived his younger brother, saying, "Of late the mo plant grows plentifully in the Yamiya pool. Pray let us go together and see it." So he followed his elder brother and went there. Before this, the elder brother had secretly made a wooden sword, in appearance like a real sword, which at this time he himself wore. The younger brother was girt with a real sword. When they both came to the head of the pool, the elder brother said to the younger, "The water of the pool is limpid and cool. Pray let us both bathe in it." The younger brother agreed to his elder brother's proposal, and they each took off the sword which he wore and laid it on the bank of the pool. Having bathed in the water, the elder brother came first to land, and taking the younger brother's real sword, girded it on himself. Afterwards the younger brother, surprised, took up his elder brother's wooden sword, but on coming to mutual blows, the younger brother was unable to draw the wooden sword. So the elder brother smote his younger brother, Iri, Ni, and killed him. Therefore the men of that day made a song, saying, "The sword girt on by the warrior of Izumo, there is the sheath enwound with creepers, but alas, there is no blade." Hereupon Yumashi, Kara, Hisa, and Yuka Tsuku Nu proceeded to court, where they reported this affair in detail. Accordingly, Kibaitsu, Hiko, and Takeru, Kaha, Wake were sent to put to death Izumo Furun. Therefore the Omi of Izumo, in dread of this, desisted for a while from the worship of the great god. Now a man of Higami in Tamba, named Hikasto, made a representation to the Prince Imperial, Ikumi no Mikoto, saying, "One of my children is a young infant." Yet of his own accord he has said this, "These are the gods worshipped by the men of Izumo, Izumo of the gem, like water, plant, and the sunken stone, viz. The true kind, beautiful, august mirror, the pinion, flapping, beautiful, august god, the bottom treasure, august treasure master, the august spirit plunged in the water of the mountain stream, the peacefully wearing august deity, the bottom treasure, august treasure master." These do not seem like the words of a young infant. May they have been spoken by divine inspiration. Hereupon the Prince Imperial reported to the Emperor, who accordingly caused them to be worshipped. BC 36. 62nd year, autumn, 7th month, 2nd day. The following edict was issued. Agriculture is the great foundation of the empire. It is that upon which the people depend for their subsistence. At present the water of Hanada of Sayama in Kahachi is scarce, and therefore the peasants of that province are remiss in their husbandry. Open up therefore abundance of ponds and runnels, and so develop the industry of the people. Winter, 10th month. The Yasami pond was made. 11th month. The Karusaka pond and the Sakahori pond were made. One version has, these 3 ponds were made when the emperor dwelt in the palace of Kuhama, BC. 33. 65th year, autumn, 7th month. The land of Imna sent Sanaka, Chūai, and offered tribute. Imna is more than 2,000 rai to the north of Tsukashi, from which it is separated by the sea. It lies to the south, west of Rin. In the 68th year of his reign, winter, the 12th month, 5th day, the emperor died at the age of 120. In the following year, autumn, the 8th month, 11th day, he was buried in the Misasagi above the road at Yamano. B. Nihongi, The Chronicles of Japan, Chapter 6. The Emperor Iku, Emi Iri Hiko Isachi. The Emperor Iku Mi Iri, Hiko, I Sach was the third child of the Emperor Mamaki Iri, Hiko, Inai. The Empress, his mother, was called Mamaki, Haim. She was the daughter of Oho, Hiko no Mikoto. The emperor was born in the palace of Mizugaki in the 29th year of the Emperor Mamaki, the 50th year of the cycle, spring, the first month, the first day. From his birth, he was of a distinguished appearance. When he grew to manhood, he had superior talent and large principles. His disposition was to be guided implicitly by truth and to avoid dissimulation. The emperor loved him and retained him near his own person. At the age of 24, in accordance with the prognostic of a dream, he made him Prince Imperial. The Emperor Mamaki, Iri, Hiko, Inai died in winter, the 12th month of the 68th year of his reign. BC 29. First year spring, second day. The Prince Imperial assumed the imperial dignity. Winter, 10th month, 11th day. The Emperor Mamaki was buried in the Misasagi over the road at Yamato. 11th month, second day. The Empress was granted the honorary title of Grand Empress. This was the year Midzu, Noitatsu of the cycle. BC 28. Second year, spring, second month, 9th day. Saho, Haim, was appointed Empress. She gave birth to Hamutsu, Wake no Mikoto. From his birth, the emperor loved him and kept him near his own person. When he grew to manhood, he could not speak. Winter, 10th month. The capital was removed to Maki, Muku. It was called the Palace of Tamaki. In this year, the man of Imna, Sanaka Chūai, asked permission to return to his country. Therefore, gifts were liberally bestowed on him, and there were entrusted to him, as a present for the king of Imna, 100 pieces of red silk. But the Silla people waylaid and robbed him, and at this time began the enmity between the two countries. One account says, in the reign of the Emperor Mamaki, there was a man with horns on his forehead who came riding in a ship and anchored in the bay of Kebai in the land of Koshi. Therefore that place was called Tsunoga. He was asked what countryman he was. He replied, saying, I am the son of the king of Great Kara. My name is Tsunoga Urshido, and I am also called Ushiki Urashichikenki. It having come to my ears that there is in the land of Japan a sage emperor, I wished to offer him my allegiance and came to Anato. Now in that land there was a man named Itsutsu, Hiko, who spoke to thy servant, saying, I am the king of this land, and there is no other king but me. Do not thou therefore proceed further. But when I observed him closely and saw what manner of man he was, I knew surely that he was not a king. So I departed again from that place, and not knowing the road, anchored at one island and bay after another, going round by way of the northern sea and passing the land of Idzumo until I arrived here. It so happened that at this time the emperor died, so he was detained and served the emperor Ikyum for 3 years. Then the emperor inquired of Arashido, saying, Dost thou wish to return to thy country? He answered and said, I earnestly desire to do so. The emperor then addressed Arashido, saying, If thou hadst not lost thy way, thou wouldst certainly have arrived here sooner, in time to serve the late emperor. Do thou, therefore, change the name of thy country. In future, take the august name of the Emperor Mamaki, and make it the name of thy country. So he gave Arashido red silk stuffs, and sent him back to his native land. This was the reason why the name of that country is called Mamana. Hereupon Arashido took the red silk which had been given him, and stored it in the magazine of his country. The people of Silla, hearing this, raised an army and proceeding thither, robbed him of all the red silk. This was the beginning of the enmity between these two countries. One writing says, In the beginning, when Tsunoga Arashido was still in his own land, he went into the country with an ox loaded with implements of husbandry. The ox suddenly disappeared, and seeking for it by its tracks, he found that the footprints ceased in a certain village. Now there was here an old man who said, "The ox which thou art in search of entered this village," and the village chief said, "With the implements which he is carrying, let us fell the ox. We must surely prepare to slay and eat him. If the owner comes in search of him, we shall indemnify him with something." So they slew and ate him. If thou art asked what thing thou desirest as the price of the ox, do not ask for treasures, but say that thou wishest to have the god worshipped by the village. Tell them so. Presently the village chiefs came and said, "What dost thou desire as the price of thy ox?" And he replied as the old man had instructed him. Now the god whom they worshipped was a white stone. So they gave the white stone to the owner of the ox, and he accordingly brought it away with him and placed it in his bed chamber. This divine stone became changed into a beautiful maiden, upon which Arashido was greatly rejoiced and wished to be united to her. But while he was away in another place, the maiden suddenly disappeared. Arashido was greatly alarmed and inquired of his wife, saying, "Whither has the maiden gone?" She replied and said, "She has gone towards the east." So he went in search of her, and at length, drifting far over the sea, he thus arrived in our country. The maiden whom he sought came to Naniha, where she became the deity of the Haimgoso shrine. Then proceeding to the district of Kusaki, in the land of Toyo, she afterwards became the deity of the Haimoso shrine. She is worshipped in both these places. BC 27. Third year, spring, third month. The Silla prince, Amanohai Hoko, arrived. The objects which he brought were 1 ha buto gem, 1 ashi daka gem, 1 red stone yukaka gem, 1 idzushi short sword, 1 idzushi spear, 1 sun mirror, 1 kuma himorogi, 7 things in all. These were stored in the land of Tajima and made divine things forever. One version says, "In the beginning, Amanohai Hoko, riding in a ship, anchored at the land of Harima, where he dwelt in the village of Shisaha. Then the emperor sent to Harima Ohitomo Nushi, the ancestor of the Miwa no Kimi, and Nagyachi, the ancestor of the Yamato no Atath, and inquired of Amanohai Hoko, saying, 'Who art thou, and to what country dost thou belong?' Amanohai Hoko answered and said, 'I am the son of the king of Silla.' Then Amanohai Hoko addressed the emperor, saying, 'In regard to a dwelling place for thy servant, if the celestial favor is bestowed on him so far as to grant thy servant the place of his desire, thy servant will himself proceed to and visit the various provinces, and he hopes that he may be granted the place which is agreeable to his mind.' This was agreed to. Thereupon Amanohai Hoko, ascending the river Uji, went northwards, until he arrived at the village of Ana in the province of Ohomi. Afterwards, he proceeded onwards, from the province of Ohomi, through the province of Wakasa, and going westward arrived at the province of Tajima. So there he fixed his dwelling place. Therefore the potters of Kagami no Hasama, in the province of Ohomi, are the servants of Amanohai Hoko. Accordingly, Amanohai Hoko took to wife Matawo, the daughter of Fudamimi, a man of Idzushi in Tajima, who bore to him Tajima Morsuk, who was the father of Tajima no Hinaraki, who was the father of Kiyohiko, who was the father of Tajima Mori. BC 26. Fourth year, autumn, 9th month, 23rd day. The empress' elder brother by the mother's side, Prince Sahohiko, plotted treason and tried to endanger the state. Therefore he watched for an occasion when the empress was enjoying her leisure, and addressing her said as follows, "Whom dost thou love best, thy elder brother or thy husband?" Upon this, the empress, ignorant of his object in making this inquiry, straightway answered and said, "I love my elder brother." Then he enticed the empress, saying, "If one serves a man by beauty, when the beauty fades, his affection will cease. There are now many beautiful women in the empire. They will come one after another, and seek affection. How then canst thou trust always to thy beauty? It is my wish, therefore, to ascend to the immense felicity, and of a certainty to rule over the empire along with thee. So making high our pillows, we shall complete a long 100 years. Would not this be delightful? I beg thee, therefore, to slay the emperor for me. So he took a dagger, and giving it to the empress, said, Gird on this dagger among thy garments, and when the emperor goes to sleep, do thou stab him in the neck, and thus kill him. Upon this, the empress trembled in her heart within, and knew not what she should do. But in view of the determination of the prince, her elder brother, she felt that remonstrance would be useless. Therefore she took the dagger, and having herself nowhere to deposit it, she placed it in her garments, intending all the while to remonstrate with her elder brother. BC 25. 5th year, winter, 10th month, 1st day. The emperor proceeded to Kume, where he dwelt in Taka Maya. Now the emperor took his noonday sleep with the empress' knees as his pillow. Up to this time the empress had accomplished nothing, but thought vainly to herself, this would be the time to do that which the prince, my elder brother, plotted. And she wept tears which fell on the emperor's face. The emperor woke up and addressed the empress, saying, Today we have had a dream. A small brocade-colored snake coiled itself round our neck, and a great rain arose from Saho, which coming hither wet our face. What does this portend? The empress thereupon, knowing that she could not conceal the plot, in fear and awe bowed herself to the earth, and informed the emperor fully of the circumstances of the prince, her elder brother, treason. Accordingly she addressed him, saying, Thy handmaiden was unable to resist the purpose of the prince, her elder brother, and yet could not be false to the gratitude due to the emperor. If I confessed, I destroyed the prince, my elder brother. If I said nothing, I overturned the temples of the earth and of grain, so that on the one hand there was fear, and on the other there was grief. Whether I looked up or down, there was lamentation. Whether I advanced or retired, there was weeping and wailing. Night and day I was disturbed in mind, and could find no way to give information. Only today, when your majesty went to sleep with his handmaiden knee as a pillow, she thought if I were mad enough to accomplish the purpose of my elder brother, at this very time the deed could be done without difficulty. With this thought still in my mind, the tears flowed spontaneously. So I raised my sleeve to wipe away the tears, and they overflowed from the sleeve and moistened your majesty's face. Therefore the dream of today must have been an effect of this thing. The small brocade-colored snake is nothing else than the dagger which was given me. The great rain which arose suddenly is nothing else than thy handmaiden tears. Then the emperor addressed the empress, saying, This is not thy crime, and raising a force from the neighboring district, he commanded Yatsunada, the remote ancestor of the Kimi of Kodzuk, to slay Saho, Hiko. Now Saho, Hiko withstood him with an army, and hastily piling up rice, stalks made thereof a castle, which was so solid that it could not be breached. This is what was called a rice castle. A month passed, and yet it did not surrender. Hereupon the empress, grieved at this, said, Even though I am empress, with what countenance can I preside over the empire, after bringing to ruin the prince, my elder brother? Accordingly, she took in her arms the imperial Prince Hamatsu Wake no Mikoto, and entered the rice castle of the prince, her elder brother. The emperor increased his army still more, and having surrounded the castle on all sides, proclaimed to those within it, saying, Send forth quickly the empress and the imperial prince. But they would not send them out. So the general Yatsunada set fire to the castle. Then the empress, taking in her bosom the imperial child, crossed over the castle and came out from it. Therewithal she besought the emperor, saying, The reason why thy handmaiden at first fled into her elder brother castle was in the hope that her elder brother might be absolved from guilt for the sake of her and of her child. But now he has not been absolved, and I know that I am guilty. Shall I have my hands tied behind my back? There is nothing left for me but to strangle myself. But even though I, thy handmaiden, die, I cannot bear to forget the favor shown me by the emperor. I pray, therefore, that the empress palace, which I had charge of, may be granted to fair mates for thee. In the land of Tamba there are 5 ladies, all of virtuous minds, the daughters of the prince, who is Michai no Ushi of Tamba. Prince Michai no Ushi was a grandson of the Emperor Waka, Yamato Niko Oho, Hai, and son of Prince Hiko, Imasu. One version has, son of Prince Hiko, Yu, Musubai Kuma. Let them be placed in the side courts to complete the number of the consort chambers. To this the emperor agreed. Then the fire blazed up, and the castle was destroyed. The troops all ran away, and Saho, Hiko and his younger sister died together inside the castle. Thereupon the emperor commended the good service of General Yatsunada, and granted him the name of Yamato, Hai Muke Take, Hai Muke Hiko Yatsunada. BC 23. 7th year, autumn, 7th month, 7th day. The courtiers represented to the emperor as follows. In the village of Tama, there is a valiant man called Kaihea of Tama. He is of great bodily strength, so that he can break horns and straighten out hooks. He is always saying to the people, "You may search the 4 quarters, but where is there one to compare with me in strength? Oh, that I could meet with a man of might, with whom to have a trial of strength, regardless of life or death." The emperor, hearing this, proclaimed to his ministers, saying, "We hear that Kaihea of Tama is the champion of the empire. Might there be anyone to compare with him?" One of the ministers came forward and said, "Thy servant hears that in the land of Izumo there is a valiant man named Nomi no Sukyun. It is desirable that thou shouldst send for him, by way of trial, and match him with Kaihea." That same day the emperor sent Nagiachi, the ancestor of the Atah of Yamato, to summon Nomi no Sukyun. Thereupon Nomi no Sukyun came from Izumo, and straightway he and Tama no Kaihea were made to wrestle together. The 2 men stood opposite to one another. Each raised his foot and kicked at the other, when Nomi no Sukyun broke with a kick the ribs of Kaihea, and also kicked and broke his loins, and thus killed him. Therefore the land of Tama no Kaihea was seized, and was all given to Nomi no Sukyun. This was the cause why there is in that village a place called Koshi, or Da, i.e. the field of the broken loins. Nomi no Sukyun remained and served the emperor. BC 15. 15th year, spring, 2nd month, 10th day. The 5 women of Tamba were sent for, and placed in the side court. The name of the first was Hibasu, Haim of the 2nd Nuba Tani Iri, Haim of the 3rd Matanu, Haim of the 4th Azami Nai Iri, Haim and of the 5th Takano Haim. Autumn, 8th month, 1st day. Hibasu, Haim no Mikoto was appointed empress, and the empress' 3 younger sisters were made concubines. Only Takano, Haim, on account of the ugliness of her form, was sent back to her own country. Accordingly, in her shame at being sent back, when she came to Kadono, she purposely tumbled from the carriage and was killed. Therefore that place received the name of Achai Kuni. The present name, Odo Kuni, is a corruption of this. The Empress Hibasu, Haim no Mikoto, had 3 sons and 2 daughters. The eldest was called Inai Shiki, Iri, Hiko no Mikoto, the 2nd Oho Tarashi, Hiko no Mikoto, the 3rd Oho Nakatsu, Haim no Mikoto, the 4th Yamato, Haim no Mikoto, and the 5th Wakaki Nai Iri, Biko no Mikoto. The concubine Nuba, Tani Iri, Haim gave birth to Nuteshi, Wake no Mikoto, and Ikatarashi, Baim no Mikoto. The next concubine Azami, Nai Iri, Baim gave birth to Ike, Heia Wake no Mikoto, and Waka, Asatsu, Haim no Mikoto. BC 7. 23rd year, autumn, 9th month, 2nd day. The emperor addressed his ministers, saying, "Prince Hamatsu, Wake is now 30 years of age. His beard is 8 span long, yet he weeps like an infant and never speaks. What can be the reason of this? So he caused commissioners to consider the matter. Winter, 10th month, 8th day. The emperor stood before the great hall, with the imperial prince Hamatsu, wake in attendance on him. Now there was a swan which crossed the great void, uttering its cry. So the emperor declared to Yukahatana, saying, "If thou present this bird to me, I will certainly reward thee liberally." Now, Yukahatana, looking from afar towards the quarter whither the swan had flown, followed in search of it to Izumo and there captured it. Some say to the land of Tajima, 11th month, 2nd day. Yukahatana presented the swan to the emperor. Hamatsu, Wake no Mikoto played with this swan, and at last learned to speak. Therefore, Yukahatana was liberally rewarded, and was granted the title of Totori no Miyako. In consequence, there was further established the bee of bird catchers, the bee of bird feeders, and the Hamu Tsubi. BC 5. 25th year, spring, 2nd month, 8th day. The emperor commanded the 5 Dabu, take Nukaha Wake, ancestor of the Abe no Omi, Hiko Kuni Fuku, ancestor of the Wani no Omi, Oho Kashima, ancestor of the Nakatomi no Mureji, Tachin, ancestor of the Mononobe no Mureji, and take Hai, ancestor of the Ohatomo no Mureji, saying, "The sagacity of our predecessor on the throne, the Emperor Mamaki Iri, Hiko, Ina, was displayed in wisdom. He was reverential, intelligent, and capable. He was profoundly unassuming, and his disposition was to cherish self-abnegation. He adjusted the machinery of government and did solemn worship to the gods of heaven and earth. He practiced self-restraint and was watchful as to his personal conduct. Every day he was heedful for that day. Thus the weal of the people was sufficient, and the empire was at peace. And now, under our reign, shall there be any remissness in the worship of the gods of heaven and earth?" 3rd month, 10th day. Amaterasu no Oho, Kami was taken from Toyo, Suki, Iri, Haim no Mikoto, and entrusted to Yamato, Haim no Mikoto. Now Yamato, Haim no Mikoto sought for a place where she might enshrine the great goddess. So she proceeded to Sasahata in Yuta. Then turning back from thence, she entered the land of Ohomi and went round eastwards to Mino, when she arrived in the province of Ise. Now Amaterasu no Oho, Kami instructed Yamato, Haim no Mikoto, saying, "The province of Ise, of the divine wind, is the land whither repair the waves from the eternal world, the successive waves. It is a secluded and pleasant land. In this land I wish to dwell. In compliance, therefore, with the instruction of the great goddess, a shrine was erected to her in the province of Ise. Accordingly, an abstinence palace was built at Kaha, Kami and Isuzu. This was called the Palace of Iso. It was there that Amaterasu no Oho, Kami, first descended from heaven. One story is that the emperor made Yamato, Haim no Mikoto, to be his august staff, and offered her to Amaterasu no Oho, Kami. Thereupon Yamato, Haim no Mikoto, took Amaterasu no Oho, Kami, and having enshrined her at Aizu, Kashi no Modo and Shiki, offered sacrifice to her. Thereafter, in compliance with the goddess' instructions, she, in winter, the 10th month of the year Hinodo Mi, on the 18th day, removed to the palace of Wadarahi in the province of Ise. At this time, the great god of Yamato inspired Ohaminakuchi no Tsukyun, the ancestor of the Hatsumi no Omi, and admonished, saying, "At the time of the great beginning, it was covenanted that Amaterasu no Oho, Kami, should govern all the plain of heaven, and that her august imperial descendants should hold absolute rule over the 80 spiritual beings of the central reed, plain land. My personal tenure of the governance of the great land is already at an end. But although the worship of the gods in heaven and earth was maintained by the late Emperor Mamaki, he failed to search out the root of the matter in its details. He was wanting in thoroughness and stopped short at the leaves and branches. Therefore that emperor was short-lived. For this reason do thou, our august descendant, now show regret for the shortcomings of the late emperor, and be watchful in regard to the ceremonies of worship. If thou dost so, the life of thine augustness will be long, and moreover the empire will have peace. Now when the emperor heard these words, he caused Fukyu Nushi, the ancestor of the Nakatomi no Mureji, to use divination in order to discover who should be appointed to conduct the worship of the great god of Yamato. Thereupon Nanaki, Waka, Haim no Mikoto answered to the divination and was consequently appointed. A sacred plot of ground was fixed on in the village of Anashi, and worship performed at Point Naga, Oka of Oho, Kai. But this Nanaki, Waka, Haim no Mikoto body was already all emaciated, so that she was unable to do sacrifice, and therefore Nagyachi no Tsukyun, ancestor of the Yamato no Atahe, was made to offer the sacrifices. BC 4. 26th year, autumn, 8th month, 3rd day. The emperor commanded the Mononobe, Tachin no Oho Mureji, saying, "We have repeatedly dispatched messengers to the land of Izumo to inspect the divine treasures of that land, but we have had no clear report. Do thou go thyself to Izumo, and having made inspection, attest them." So Tachin no Oho Mureji, having examined and attested the divine treasures, made a clear report thereof to his majesty. He was accordingly appointed to the charge of the divine treasures. BC 3. 27th year, autumn, 8th month, 7th day. The department of worship was made to ascertain by divination what implements of war would be lucky as offerings to the gods. Consequently, bows, arrows, and cross, swords were deposited in the shrines of all the gods. The land and houses consecrated to their service were fixed anew, and they were sacrificed to in due season. The practice of offering weapons in sacrifice to the gods of heaven and earth probably had its origin at this time. This year granaries were erected in the village of Kume. BC 2. 28th year, winter, 10th month, 5th day. Yamato, Hiko no Mikoto, the emperor's younger brother by the mother's side, died. 11th month, 2nd day. Yamato, Hiko was buried at Tsuki, Zaka, and Musa. Thereupon his personal attendants were assembled, and were all buried alive upright in the precinct of the Misasagi. For several days they died not, but wept and wailed day and night. At last they died and rotted. Dogs and crows gathered and ate them. The emperor, hearing the sound of their weeping and wailing, was grieved in heart, and commanded his high officers, saying, "It is a very painful thing to force those whom one has loved in life to follow him in death. Though it be an ancient custom, why follow it if it is bad? From this time forward, take counsel so as to put a stop to the following of the dead." AD 1. 30th year, spring, 1st month, 6th day. So a bow and arrows were given to Inishiki no Mikoto, and a decree was addressed to Oho, Tarashi Hiko no Mikoto, saying, "Thou must succeed to our dignity." AD 3. 32nd year, autumn, 7th month, 6th day. The Empress Hibasu, Haim no Mikoto, died. One version has Hibasu ni no Mikoto. Some time before the burial, the emperor commanded his ministers, saying, "We have already recognized that the practice of following the dead is not good. What should now be done in performing this burial?" Thereupon Nomi no Tsukyun came forward and said, "It is not good to bury living men upright at the tumulus of a prince. How can such a practice be handed down to posterity? I beg leave to propose an expedient which I will submit to your majesty." So he sent messengers to summon up from the land of Izumo 100 men of the clay, workers bee. So the things of clay were first set up at the tomb of Hibasu, Haim no Mikoto. And a name was given to these clay objects. They were called Hani, Wa. Another name is Tate Mono. Then a decree was issued, saying, Henceforth these clay figures must be set up at tumuli. Let not men be harmed. The emperor bountifully rewarded Nomi no Sukyun for this service, and also bestowed on him a kneading place, and appointed him to the official charge of the clay workers' bee. His original title was therefore changed, and he was called Hashi no Omi. This was how it came to pass that the Hashi no Muraji superintend the burials of the emperors. The said Nomi no Sukyun was the first ancestor of the Hashi no Muraji. AD 5. 34th year, spring, 3rd month, 2nd day. The emperor made a progress to Yamashiro. At this time, his courtiers represented to him that there was in that country a beautiful person named Kambata no To. She was very handsome, and was the daughter of Fuch of Ohokuni in Yamashiro. Hereupon the emperor, spear in hand, made a vow, saying, "I must be united to this beautiful person." On his way he saw an omen. When he was arriving at his lodging, a large tortoise came out from the river. The emperor raised his spear and thrust at Tsuchai Ningyo. Tsuchai Ningyo, the tortoise, when it suddenly became changed into a white stone. Then the courtiers said, "If one were only to think this out, it must prognosticate something." So Kambata no To was sent for and lodged in the Hinder palace. She was the mother of Iha, Tsuku, Wake no Mikoto, who was the ancestor of the Kimi of Miho. Before this, he had taken to wife Kari, Hata, Toke, who bore him 3 sons. The first was called Oji, Wake no Mikoto, the second Ika Tarashi, Hiko no Mikoto, and the third I Take, Wake no Mikoto. Ika Tarashi, Hiko no Mikoto was the first ancestor of the Kimi of Ishida. AD 6. 35th year, autumn, 9th month. Inishiki no Mikoto was sent to the province of Kahachi to construct the pond of Takashi and the pond of Chinu. Winter, 10th month. He made the pond of Saki and Yamato and the pond of Tomi. In this year, the various provinces were commanded extensively to excavate ponds and channels, to the number of 800 and more. Much attention was thus paid to husbandry. Therefore the people enjoyed abundance, and the empire was at peace. AD 8. 37th year, spring, 1st month, 1st day. Oho, Tarashi, Hiko no Mikoto was made Prince Imperial. AD 10. 39th year, winter, 10th month. Inishiki no Mikoto, while dwelling in the palace at Kahakami of Yudo in Chinu, made 1,000 swords. Therefore those swords were called the Kahakami set. Another name was the Naked Companions. They were deposited in the shrine of Iso no Kami. After this, the emperor gave orders to Inishiki no Mikoto and made him to have charge of the divine treasures of the shrine of Iso no Kami. One version is, whilst the imperial prince Inishiki dwelt at Kahakami of Yudo in Chinu, he sent for a smith by name Kahakami and made 1,000 swords. At this time, the shield makers bee, the Japanese figured, cloth workers bee, the sacred bow shavers bee, the sacred arrow makers bee, the Oho, Anashi bee, the Hatsu, Kashi bee, the jewel workers bee, the Kami, Osaka bee, the high oki bee, and the sword wearers bee, the bee of 10 articles altogether, were granted to the imperial prince Inishiki. These 1,000 swords were deposited in the village of Osaka. They were afterwards removed from Osaka and deposited in the shrine of Iso no Kami. At this time, the god made a request, saying, "Let the person named Ikikaha of the family of the Omi of Kasuga be made to attend to them." Therefore, by the emperor command, Ikikaha was caused to attend to them. He was the first ancestor of the Mononobe no Abido, AD 58. 87th year, spring, 2nd month, 5th day. Inishiki no Mikoto spake to his younger sister, Oho Nakatsu, Haim no Mikoto, saying, "I am old and unable to have charge of the divine treasures. Henceforward thou must have charge of them. Oho Nakatsu, Haim refused, saying, I am a feeble woman. How can I ascend to the divine storehouse of heaven? Inishiki no Mikoto said, although the divine storehouse is high, I can make for the divine storehouse a ladder. How then should it be hard to ascend to the storehouse? Hence the proverbial saying, you can ascend even to the divine storehouse of heaven if you only plant a ladder. This was its origin. Ultimately, Oho, Naka, Su, Haim no Mikoto gave them to Mononobe no Tachin no Oho Muraji and made him to have charge of them. Therefore the Mononobe no Muraji retained charge of the divine treasures of ice, no kami up to the present time. The above was the origin of this practice. Formerly in the land of Tamba, in the village of Kiwata, there was a man whose name was Mikaso. Now, in Mikaso House there was a dog, by name Yuki. This dog bit a wild animal called the Mujina and killed it. In the animal belly, there was found a Magatama of Yasaka gem. This gem was accordingly offered to the emperor and is now in the shrine of Iso no Kami. AD 59. 88th year, autumn 7th month, 10th day. The emperor commanded the ministers, saying, we hear that the divine treasures which the Silla Prince Ama no Hihoko brought with him when he first came here are now in Tajima. They were originally made divine treasures because the people of that province saw that they were admirable. We desire to see these treasures. That same day messengers were dispatched with the imperial commands to Kiyo, Hiko, great, grandson of Ama no Hihoko, directing him to present them to the emperor. Thereupon, Kiyo, Hiko, when he received the imperial orders, brought the divine treasures himself and laid them before his majesty. There was one Ha Buto gem, one Ashi Daka gem, one Yuka no Akashi gem, one sun mirror, and one Kuma Himorogi. But there was one short sword called Idzushi, which it suddenly occurred to Kiyo, Hiko not to offer to the emperor, so he concealed it in his clothing and wore it himself. The emperor, unaware of the circumstance of the concealment of the short sword, and wishing to be gracious to Kiyo, Hiko, sent for him and gave him sake in the palace. Then the short sword appeared from among his garments and became visible. The emperor saw it and himself asked Kiyo Hiko, saying, what short sword is that in thy clothing? Then Kiyo, Hiko, seeing that he was unable to conceal the short sword, explained that it belonged to the divine treasures which he was laying before the emperor. So the emperor said to Kiyo, Hiko, how is it possible for this divine treasure to be separated from its kind? So he took it out and presented it to the emperor, and all were deposited in the sacred treasury. Afterwards, when the sacred treasury was opened and inspected, the short sword had spontaneously disappeared. Accordingly, a messenger was sent to Kiyo Hiko, who inquired of him, saying, the short sword which thou hast presented to the emperor has suddenly disappeared. Has it perchance come to thy place? Kiyo Hiko answered and said, last night the short sword came of its own accord to thy servant house, but this morning it has disappeared. The emperor was struck with awe and made no further endeavor to find it. Afterwards, the Idzushi short sword went of its own accord to the island of Ahaji, where the people of the island considered it a god, and erected for the short sword a shrine, in which it is worshipped until this day. Formerly, there was a man who, riding in a ship, cast anchor in the land of Tajima. He was therefore asked, saying, of what country art thou? He answered and said, I am a son of the king of Silla, and my name is Ama no Hihoko. So he dwelt in Tajima and took to wife Mata no Wo, daughter of Mahetsu Mimi of that province, who bore to him Tajima Morisuk, the grandfather of Kiyo, Hiko. AD 61. 90th year, spring, 2nd month, 1st day. The emperor commanded Tajima Mori to go to the eternal land and get the fragrant fruit that grows out of season, now called the Takebana. AD 70. 99th year, autumn, 7th month, 14th day. The emperor died in the palace of Maki, Muku, at the age of 140. And in winter, the 12th month, the 10th day, was buried in the Misasagi of Fushimi, in Suga, Hara. The next year, spring, the 3rd month, the 12th day, Tajima Mori arrived from the Eternal Land, bringing of the fragrant fruit that grows out of season 8 sticks and 8 bundles. Thereupon Tajima Mori wept and lamented, saying, "Receiving the celestial court command, afar I went to a remote region. 10,000 rai I crossed the waves, distantly I passed over the weak water. This eternal land is no other than the mysterious realm of gods and genii, to which ordinary mortals cannot attain. Therefore, in going thither and returning, 10 years have naturally passed. Beyond my expectation, I braved alone the towering billows, turning my way again towards my own land. Thus, trusting in the spirits of the emperors, I hardly accomplished my return. But now the emperor is dead, I am unable to report my mission. Though I should remain alive, what more would it avail me?" Then turning his face towards the Misasagi of the emperor, he wept aloud, and so of himself he died. When the ministers heard of it, they all shed tears. Tajima Mori was the first ancestor of the Miyake no Mureji. B. Nihongi, The Chronicles of Japan, Chapter 7. The Emperor Oho, Tierashai Hikyo Oshichiro Wake. The Emperor Oho Terashi, Hiko Ashir, Wake was the 3rd child of the Emperor Ikumi Iri, Hiko Isachi. The Empress, his mother, was named Hibasu, Haim no Mikoto. She was the daughter of Prince Michi, no Ashi of Tamba. The Emperor Ikumi Iri, Hiko Isachi, in the 37th year of his reign, raised him to the rank of Prince Imperial. He was then 21 years of age. In the 99th year of his reign, spring, the 2nd month, the Emperor Ikumi Iri, Hiko Isachi died. AD 71. 1st year, autumn, 7th month, 11th day. The Prince Imperial assumed the imperial dignity. The chronological epic was altered accordingly. This year was the year Kanoto Hitsuji of the cycle. AD 72. 2nd year, spring, 3rd month, 3rd day. The elder lady of Inabai in Harima was appointed empress. Another version has the younger lady of Inabai in Harima. She had 2 sons, the first of whom was named the Imperial Prince Oho, Yuzu, and the second Wo, Yuzu no Mikoto. In one writing it is said, the empress bore 3 sons. The third was named the Imperial Prince Waka, Yamato, Nikko. The Imperial Prince Oho, Yuzu, and Wo, Yuzu no Mikoto, were born as twins on the same day with the same placenta. The emperor, wondering at this, informed the mortar. Therefore he gave these 2 princes the names of Great Mortar and Little Mortar. Now this Wo, Yuzu no Mikoto, was also called Yamato Waguna, and again Yamato, Dake no Mikoto. Whilst a child, he had a manly spirit. When he arrived at manhood, his beauty was extraordinary. He was a rod in height, and his strength was such that he could lift a tripod. AD 73. 3rd year, spring, 2nd month, 1st day. Divination was made as to whether the emperor should make a progress to the land of Kiai, to perform sacrifices to all the gods of heaven and earth. It was found to be unlucky, and the imperial car was accordingly countermanded. Yun Nushi, Ashiho, Dake Wo, Goro no Mikoto was sent and caused to do sacrifice. Hereupon Yun Nushi, Ashiho, Dake Wo, Goro no Mikoto went thither and stayed at Kashihara in Abai, where he sacrificed to the gods of heaven and earth. He lived here for 9 years and took to wife Kage, Haim, the daughter of Uji, Hiko, who was the ancestor of the Kai no Atoth. She was the mother of Takechai no Sukyun. AD 74. 4th year, spring, 2nd month, 11th day. The emperor made a progress to Mino. His courtiers represented to him, saying, "In this province there is a handsome woman named Odo, Haim, of perfect beauty. She is the daughter of the imperial prince Yasaka Irihiko." The emperor wished to obtain her to be his consort and went to the house of Odo, Haim. Odo, Haim, hearing that the emperor was coming in his carriage, straightway concealed herself in a bamboo grove. Hereupon the emperor provisionally caused Odo, Haim, to go and reside in the Kuguri palace, and letting loose carp in a pond, amused himself by looking at them morning and evening. Now Odo, Haim, wished to see the carp sporting, so she came secretly and stood over the pond. The emperor forthwith detained her and had intercourse with her. Hereupon Odo, Haim, thought, "The way of a husband and wife is the prevailing rule both now and of old time. But for me it is not convenient." So she besought the emperor, saying, "Thy handmaiden disposition is averse to the way of conjugal intercourse. Unable to withstand the awe of the imperial commands, she has been placed for a while within the curtain. But it gives her no pleasure. Her face, too, is hideous, and she is unworthy of being added to the side courts. Thy handmaiden, however, has an elder sister, by name Yasaka Iri, Haim, of a beautiful countenance, and also of a virtuous disposition. Let her be placed in the Hinder palace." The emperor assented, and having summoned Yasaka Iri, Haim made her his consort. She bore to him 7 sons and 6 daughters. Of the 11th, the imperial prince Kibai no Yi, Hiko; of the 12th, the imperial princess Takaki no Iri, Haim; and of the 13th, the imperial princess Odo, Haim. Again he took as consort the lady Midzuha, younger sister of Ihaki, Wake, of the Miho house, who bore to him the imperial princess Ihono. His next consort, named Akaha, Haim, bore to him the imperial prince Kami, Kushi, and the imperial prince Inas no Iri, Hiko. The elder of these two, the imperial prince Kami, Kushi, was the first ancestor of the Miyako of Sanuki. The younger, the imperial prince Inas no Iri, Hiko, was the first ancestor of the Harima no Wake. His next consort was named Takada, Haim, daughter of Kagoto of the Abe house, who bore to him the imperial prince Take, Kuni Kori, Wake. He was the first ancestor of the Wake of Mamura, in the province of Iyo. His next consort, named Oho Tain, Haim, of Kami Naga and Hyuga, bore the imperial prince Hyuga no Satsu, Hiko. He was the first ancestor of the Kimi of Amu. His next consort, named Sadek, Baim, bore the imperial prince Kuni, Kai Wake, the imperial prince Kuni, Si Wake, and the imperial prince To Wake. The elder of these, the imperial prince Kuni, Kai Wake, was the first ancestor of the Wake of Minuma. The youngest brother, the imperial prince Toyo To Wake, was the first ancestor of the Wake of the province of Hai. Now the children of the emperor, male and female, from first to last, numbered 80 in all. With the exception, however, of Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, the emperor Waka, Tarashi, Hiko, and the imperial prince Ihoki no Iri. Hiko, the other 70 and odd children were all granted fiefs of provinces and districts, and each proceeded to his own province. Therefore, those who at the present time are called Wake of the various provinces are the descendants of these separated princes. In this month, the emperor, hearing that the daughters of Kambon, Mino no Miyako, the elder name being Ain, Toho, Ko, and the younger being Odo, Toho, Ko, were both of distinguished beauty, sent Oho, Yuzu no Mikoto with orders to examine the countenance of these women. Now Oho, Yuzu no Mikoto had secret intercourse with them, and did not report his mission. For this reason the emperor was wrath with Oho, Yuzu no Mikoto. Winter, the 11th month, first day. The emperor returned from Mino, and removed the capital to Maki, Muku. This was called the Palace of Hai Shiro. AD 82. 12th year, autumn, 7th month, The Kumaso rebelled and did not bring tribute. 8th month, 5th day. The emperor made a progress to Tsukushi. 9th month, 5th day. On arriving at Saha in Suwo, the emperor, standing with his face to the south, addressed his ministers, saying, "To the southwards, smoke rises abundantly. There must certainly be brigands there." So he halted, and sending in advance take Maro, Gi, ancestor of the Omi of Oho, Unade, ancestor of the Omi of Kusaki, and Natsu, Bana, ancestor of the Kimi of the Mononobe, made them to reconnoiter. Now there was here a woman, by name Kamu Nashi, Haim, whose followers were exceedingly numerous. She was the chieftain of that whole country. When she heard that the emperor messengers had arrived, she broke off branches of the hard wood of Mount Shitsu. On the upper branch she hung an 8-span sword, on the middle branch she hung an 8-hand mirror, and on the lower branch a Yasaka jewel. She also hoisted a white flag on the bow of her ship, and having come to meet them, addressed them, saying, "I beseech you, do not have recourse to arms. None of my people, I assure you, are rebellious. They will presently submit themselves to virtue. But there are mischievous brigands. The name of one is Hanatari. He has assumed an unauthorized title. In the mountains and valleys, he has called men together, and is encamped at Kahakami in USA. Another is called Mimi Tari. He is a mischievous brigand, rapacious, frequently plundering the people. He dwells at Kakami and Mike. The third is called Asa Hagi. He has secretly assembled a following, and dwells at Kahakami in Takaha. The name of the fourth is Tsuch, Wari Wai Wari. He lives concealed at Kahakami in Midori-no, and relying solely on the difficulties of the mountains and rivers, plunders the people greatly. All the places to which these four have betaken themselves are strong places. Each of them, therefore, makes his relations chiefs of one place, and they all say they will not obey the imperial command. I pray you attack them suddenly, and fail not." Hereupon take Maro, Gi and the others first enticed the followers of Asa Hagi, and gave them presents of trousers of red material and all manner of curious objects. Then, having made them beckon to the four unsubmissive men, who came accompanied by their followers, they seized them and put them all to death. The emperor ultimately pursued his journey to Tsukushi, and arrived at the district of Nagawa in the province of Buzan, where he erected a traveling palace and dwelt there. Therefore, the name of that place was called Miyako. Winter, 10th month. He arrived in the land of Ohakida. The form of this region is wide and beautiful. Therefore it was called Ohakida. When he came to the village of Hayami, there was there a woman named Heya, Su, Haim. She was chieftain of one place. When she heard that the imperial car was coming, she went out in person to meet the emperor, and reported to him, saying, "In this mountain there is a great cavern called the Rat Cave. There are two Tsuchai, Gumo, who dwell in this cave. One is called Awo, and the other Shira. Again at Nejino, in the district of Nawari, there are three Tsuchai, Gumo. The name of the first is Uchai, Zaru, of the second Yada, and of the third Kunimero. These 5 men are alike mighty of frame, and moreover have numerous followers. They all say that they will not obey the imperial command. If their coming is insisted on, they will raise an army and offer resistance. The emperor, provoked by this, could not advance on his journey. So he halted at the village of Kutami, where he erected a temporary palace muro and dwelt therein. Then he consulted with his ministers, saying, "Let us now put in motion a numerous army and slay the Tsuchai, Gumo. If, fearing the might of our arms, they should conceal themselves in the mountains and moors, they will assuredly do future mischief." Accordingly, he gathered camellia trees and made of them mallets for weapons. Then, selecting his bravest soldiers, he gave them the mallet weapons. Therewith they pierced through the mountains, cleared away the grass, and attacking the Tsuch, Gumo of the Cave, defeated them at Kehakami in Inaba. The whole band were killed, and their blood flowing reached to the ankle. Therefore the men of that day called the place where the camellia mallets were made Tsubaki, no, Ikai, and the place where the blood flowed they called Chita. Then, in order to attack Uchai Zaru, he crossed straight over Mount Negi. At this time, the arrows of the enemy, shot crosswise from the mountain, fell like rain in front of the Imperial army. The emperor retreated to Shiro-hara, where he made divination on the river bank, and accordingly arraying his troops, he first attacked Yada on the moor of Negi and defeated him. Upon this Uchai, Zaru felt that he could not gain the victory, and prayed that his submission should be accepted. This, however, was refused, and they all flung themselves into a ravine and were killed. In the beginning, when the emperor was about to attack the enemy, he made a station on the great moor of Kashihawo. On this moor there was a stone 6 feet in length, 3 feet in breadth, and 1 foot 5 inches in thickness. The emperor prayed, saying, "If we are to succeed in destroying the Tsuchai Gumo, when we kick this stone, may we make it mount up like a kashiha leaf." Accordingly he kicked it, upon which, like a kashiha leaf, it arose to the great void. Therefore that stone was called Hamishi. The gods whom he prayed to at this time were the god of Shiga, the god of the Mononobe of Nowori, and the god of the Nakatomi of Nowori, these 3 gods. 11th month. He arrived at the land of Hyuga and erected a traveling palace, wherein he took up his residence. This was called the Palace of Taikaya. 12th month, 5th day. Council was held how they should attack the Kumaso. Hereupon the emperor addressed his ministers, saying, "We have heard that in the land of the Kumaso there are 2 men named Atsukaya and Sakaya, who are the leaders of the Kumaso. Their followers are exceedingly numerous, and are called the 80 Kumaso Braves. It will be better not to touch their spear points. For if we raise a small force, it will be insufficient to exterminate the brigands, while if a large army is put in motion, the people will suffer harm. Is there no means of subduing this country without active measures, and without resorting to the might of arms?" Then one of the ministers stood forward and said, "A Kumaso brave has 2 daughters, the elder named Ikai Fukaya and the younger Ikai Kaya. Their beauty is perfect, and their hearts are brave. Offer valuable presents, and under the pretense of bestowing them beneath thy standard, take advantage of this to gain intelligence of the enemy and attack them unawares. So without ever a sword edge being stained with blood, the enemy will surely yield themselves up." The emperor gave command, saying, "Let it be so." Thereupon the presents were offered, and the 2 women, deceived by them, were bestowed beneath the tent. The emperor straightway had intercourse with Ikai, Fukaya, and made a show of affection for her. Then Ikai, Fukaya told the emperor, saying, "Be not anxious lest the Kumaso should not submit. Thy handmaiden has an excellent plan. Let me have 1 or 2 soldiers to follow me." She then returned to her home and prepared much strong sake, which she made her father drink. He became drunk and lay down to sleep. Ikai, Fukaya then secretly cut her father bowstring. Thereupon one of the soldiers who had escorted her came up and killed the Kumaso brave. The emperor was provoked by such excessively unfilial conduct and put Ikai, Fukaya to death. But Ikai, Kaya he gave to the Miyako of the land of Kai. AD 83. 13th year, summer, 5th month. The Kumaso country having been all subdued, the emperor accordingly dwelt in the palace of Taikaya. When he had lived there 6 years, there was a beautiful woman in that country named Mihakashi, Haim. So he took her and made her his concubine. She bore to him the imperial prince Toyo, Kuni, Wake. He was the first ancestor of the Miyako of the land of Hyuga. AD 87. 17th year, spring, 3rd month, 12th day. The emperor made a progress to the district of Koyu. where he visited the little moor of Nemo. Then looking down towards the east, he said to his courtiers, "This country faces directly the quarter of the rising sun." Therefore he named that country Hyuga. On this day he mounted upon a great stone in the middle of the moor, and feeling a longing for the capital, made this poetry. Oh, how sweet! From the quarter of my home, clouds arising come hither. Yamato is the most secluded of lands. Yamato, retired behind Mount Aogaki, which encompasses it in its folds, is beautiful. Let those whose lives are sound stick, by way of headdress branches, of the white evergreen oak of Mount Heguri. This child. This is called a song of longing for one country. AD 88. 18th year, spring, 3rd month. The emperor, when about to turn his way towards the capital, made a tour of inspection to the land of Tsukushi. He first arrived at Hinamori. There was at this time, on the bank of the river Ihase, a crowd of men assembled. The emperor, looking down on them from afar, addressed his courtiers, saying, "Who are these men who are assembled? Are they an enemy?" So he sent 2 men, Hinamori the elder and Hinamori the younger, to see. Now Hinamori the younger returned and reported, saying, "Idzumi, Haim, the Kimi of Muro Kata, is about to offer your majesty a banquet, and therefore have people gathered together." Summer, 4th month, 3rd day. The emperor arrived at the district of Kuma. In this place there were 2 brothers called Kuma, Hiko. The emperor first sent to summon Kuma the elder to him. Accordingly, he came along with the messenger. Then he summoned Kuma the younger, but he would not come. Therefore he sent soldiers and put him to death. 11th day. Proceeding by the sea route, he anchored at a small island in Ashikita, where he partook of food. Then he told Wo, Hidari, ancestor of the Yama no Ahiko, to give him some cold water. Just at this time, there was no water in the island, and he did not know what to do. So looking up, he prayed to the gods of heaven and the gods of earth, when suddenly a cool spring bubbled forth from the side of a cliff. This he drew and put before the emperor. Therefore that island was called Mitsushima. That spring still exists in the cliff of Mitsushima. 5th month, 1st day. Setting sail from Ashikita, he proceeded to the land of Hai. Here the sun went down, and the night being dark, they did not know how to reach the shore. A fire was seen shining afar off, and the emperor commanded the helmsman, saying, "Make straight for the place where the fire is." So he proceeded towards the fire, and thus was enabled to reach the shore. The emperor made inquiry respecting the place where the fire was, saying, "What is the name of this village?" The people of the land answered and said, "Toyomura, in the district of Yatsushiro." Again he made inquiry respecting the fire. "Whose fire is this?" But no owner could be found, and thereupon it was known that it was not a fire made by man. Therefore that country was called Hai no Kuni. 6th month, 3rd day. He crossed over from the district of Takaku to the village of Tamakina. At this time he killed at Tsuche, Gumo of that place called Tsudzura. 16th day. He arrived at the land of Aso. The level tracts of that land were wide and far, reaching, but no dwellings of men were to be seen. The emperor said, "Are there any people in this country?" Now there were 2 deities, one called Aso Tsuhiko and the other Aso Tsuhaim, who suddenly assuming human form, sauntered forward and said, "We too are here." How can it be said that there are no men? Therefore that place was called Aso. Autumn, 7th month, 4th day. He arrived at Mike in the further land of Tsukushi, where he dwelt in the temporary palace of Taikata. Now there was here a fallen tree, 970 rods in length. The 100 functionaries passed backwards and forwards, stepping on this tree. The people of that day made a song, saying, "The morning hoar frost August tree pole, bridge." The lords of the presence pass over it, the august tree pole, bridge. The emperor inquired, saying, "What tree is this?" There was there an old man who said, "This tree is a Kusanagi tree." Before it fell down, when the rays of the morning sun fell on it, it overshadowed the hill of Kashima. When the rays of the evening sun fell on it, it covered Mount Aso. The emperor said, "This tree is a divine tree. Therefore let this country be called the land of Mike." 7th day. He reached the district of Yame, where, crossing Mount Ma, he looked down to the south upon Aha no Saki, and spake, saying, "The peaks and glens of this mountain follow each other fold upon fold. They are exceedingly beautiful. May it be that a god dwells in this mountain." Then Saru, Ohomi, the Agata Nushi of Minuma, represented to the emperor, saying, "There is a female deity named Yame, Tsuheim, who dwells always among these mountains. This is therefore the reason why this country is called the land of Yame." 8th month. He arrived at the village of Ikuha, where he partook of food. On this day, the stewards left behind the drinking cup. Wherefore the men of that day called the place where the drinking cup had been forgotten Yukuha. The present name, Ikuha, is a corruption of this. In old times, the common people of Tsukushi called a drinking cup Yukuha. AD 89. 19th year, autumn, 9th month, 20th day. The emperor arrived from Hyuga. AD 90. 20th year, spring, 2nd month, 4th day. The princess Ihona was made to sacrifice to Amaterasu no Oho, Kami. AD 95. 25th year, autumn, 7th month, 3rd day. Taikchai no Sukyun was commissioned to inquire into the geography of the various provinces of the northern and eastern circuits and the condition of the people. AD 97. 27th year, spring, 2nd month, 12th day. Taikchai no Sukyun returned from the east country and informed the emperor, saying, "In the eastern wilds there is a country called Hidakami. The people of this country, both men and women, tie up their hair in the form of a mallet and tattoo their bodies. They are of fierce temper, and their general name is Yamishi. Moreover, their land is wide and fertile. We should attack them and take it." Autumn, 8th month. The Kumaso again rebelled and made unceasing inroads on the frontier districts. Winter, 10th month, 13th day. Yamato Takeru no Mikoto was sent to attack the Kumaso. He was at this time 16 years of age. Thereupon Yamato Takeru no Mikoto said, "I desire to take with me some good archers." "Where are there any good archers?" Someone told him, saying, "In the province of Mino there is a good archer named Odo Hiko Gimi." Thereupon Yamato Takeru no Mikoto sent Miyato Hiko, a man of Katsuraki, and summoned to him Odo Hiko Gimi. Therefore Odo Hiko Gimi came and brought with him Ishiura no Yakatachi, Tako no Inaki, and Chichika no Inaki of the province of Ohari, and followed Yamato Takeru no Mikoto on his expedition. 12th month. Having arrived at the land of Kumaso, he inquired into the state of things and the character of the country in respect of facilities of access. Now the Kumaso had a leader named Torishi, Kaya, also called the Brave of Kahakami, who assembled all his relations in order to give them a banquet. Hereupon Yamato Takeru no Mikoto let down his hair, and disguising himself as a young girl, secretly waited until the banquet should be given by the Brave of Kahakami. Then with a sword girded on him underneath his inner garment, he entered the banqueting muro of the Brave of Kahakami and remained among the women. The Brave of Kahakami, enchanted with the beauty of the young girl, forthwith took her by the hand and made her sit beside him. He also offered her the cup and made her drink, and thus amused himself with her. By and by the night grew late, and the company fewer. Also the Brave of Kahakami became intoxicated. Hereupon Yamato Dake no Mikoto drew the sword which he had in his inner garments and stabbed the brave of Keihakami in the breast, but did not kill him outright. The brave of Keihakami, bowing down his head to the ground, said, "Wait a little. I have something to say." Then Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, stayed his sword and waited. The brave of Keihakami addressed him, saying, "Who is thine augustness?" He answered and said, "I am the child of the Emperor Oho Terashi Hiko, and my name is Yamato Waguna." The brave of Keihakami again spake to him, saying, "I am the strongest man in all this land, and therefore none of the men of this time can excel me in might, and none refuses to be my follower. I have met with many valiant men, but none as yet could match the prince. Therefore this despicable robber, from his filthy mouth, offers thine augustness a title. Wilt thou accept it?" He said, "I will accept it." So he spake to him, saying, "Henceforward in speaking of the imperial prince, let him be styled the imperial prince Yamato Dake." When he had done speaking Yamato, Dake pierced his breast through and killed him. Therefore up to the present day he is styled Yamato, Dake no Mikoto. This was the origin of it. Afterwards he dispatched Odo, Hiko, and the others, who slew all that band, leaving not a chewer, and when this was done, he returned by sea to Yamato. Arriving at Kibai, he crossed the Ana Sea. In this place there was a malignant deity, whom he forthwith slew. Again, turning northwards, he arrived at Naniha, where he killed the malignant deity of the Kashiha Ferry. AD 98. 28th year, spring, 2nd month, 1st day. Yamato Dake no Mikoto reported to the emperor how he had subdued the Kumaso, saying, "Thy servant, trusting in the emperor divine spirit, by force of arms at one blow, suddenly slew the Kumaso chieftain and reduced that whole country to peace. In this way the western land is now quiet, and the people are undisturbed. Only the god of the ferry of Ana in Kibai and the god of the ferry of Kashiha at Naniha, both, with mischievous intent, sent forth a poisonous vapor, by which travelers were plagued. Both of them formed centers of calamity. Therefore I killed all those evil deities, and have thrown open the roads by land and water alike." The emperor upon this commended the good service done by Yamato Dake no Mikoto, and bestowed extraordinary affection on him. AD 110. 40th year, summer, 6th month. There was wide rebellion of the eastern wilds, and the frontier was in a state of tumult. Autumn, 7th month, 6th day. The emperor addressed his ministers, saying, "The eastern country is now in an unquiet state, and turbulent deities have sprung up in numbers. Moreover, the Yamishi have rebelled to man, and frequently carry off the people. Whom shall I send to still this disturbance?" But none of the ministers knew whom to send. Then Yamato Dake no Mikoto addressed the emperor, saying, "Thy servant it was who formerly performed the labor of the expedition to the west. This campaign must be the business of the imperial prince Oho, Yuzu." But the imperial prince Oho, Yuzu, was afraid, and ran to conceal himself among the grass. Accordingly, a messenger was sent to fetch him. Hereupon the emperor chid him, saying, "If thou dost not wish it, shall we insist on sending thee? Why all this alarm, whilst thou hast not yet confronted the enemy?" Accordingly, he eventually granted him Mino as a fief, and so he went to his government. He was the first ancestor of the two houses of the Kimi of Muketsu and the Kimi of Mori. Upon this, Yamato Dake no Mikoto, striking a martial attitude, said, "Not many years have passed since I subdued the Kumaso. Now the Yamishi of the east have made a fresh rebellion. When shall we arrive at a universal peace? Thy servant, notwithstanding that it is a labor to him, will speedily quell this disturbance." So the emperor took a battle axe, and giving it to Yamato Dake no Mikoto, said, "We hear that the eastern savages are of a violent disposition, and are much given to oppression. Their hamlets have no chiefs, their villages no leaders, each is greedy of territory, and they plunder one another. Moreover, there are in the mountains malignant deities. On the moors there are malicious demons, who beset the highways and bar the roads, causing men much annoyance. Amongst these eastern savages, the Yamishi are the most powerful. Their men and women live together promiscuously. There is no distinction of father and child. In winter, they dwell in holes. In summer, they live in nests. Their clothing consists of furs, and they drink blood. Brothers are suspicious of one another. In ascending mountains, they are like flying birds. In going through the grass, they are like fleet quadrupeds. When they receive a favor, they forget it, but if an injury is done them, they never fail to revenge it. Therefore they keep arrows in their top, knots and carry swords within their clothing. Sometimes they draw together their fellows and make inroads on the frontier. At other times, they take the opportunity of the harvest to plunder the people. If attacked, they conceal themselves in the herbage. If pursued, they flee into the mountains. Therefore, ever since antiquity, they have not been steeped in the kingly civilizing influences. Now we mark that thou art mighty of stature, and thy countenance is of perfect beauty. Thou hast strength sufficient to raise tripods. Thy fierceness is like thunder and lightning. Wherever thou dost turn thy face, there is none to stand before thee. Whenever thou dost attack, thou dost surely conquer. This we know, that whereas in outward form thou art our child, in reality thou art a god. Truly heaven, commiserating our want of intelligence and the disturbed condition of the country, has ordained that thou shouldst order the heavenly institution and save the monarchy from extinction. Moreover, this empire is thy empire, and this dignity is thy dignity. I adjure thee to exercise profound policy and far-reaching foresight in searching out iniquity and watching against crises. Admonish with majesty, comfort with kindness. Avoid having recourse to arms, and thou wilt naturally inspire loyal obedience. So by cunning words thou mayst moderate the violent deities, and by a display of armed force sweep away malignant demons. Then Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, received the battle axe, and bowing twice addressed the emperor, saying, "But few years have elapsed since my former expedition to the west, when, trusting in the might of the imperial spirit, I with a sword 3 feet in length conquered the land of Kumaso, and the rebel chiefs yielded themselves to punishment. Now again, trusting in the spirits of the gods of heaven and earth, and in reliance on the imperial might, I am proceeding to the frontier. I will admonish them by gentle teaching, and if any remain unsubmissive, I will smite them with arms." So he again bowed twice. Then the emperor commanded Kibai no Take, Hiko and Ohitomo no Take, Hai no Muraji to follow Yamato, Dake no Mikoto. He also appointed Nanatsuka, Hagi his steward. Winter, 10th month, 2nd day. Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, set out on his journey. 7th day. He turned aside from his way to worship at the shrine of Ise. Here he took leave of Yamato, Haim no Mikoto, saying, "By order of the emperor, I am now proceeding on an expedition against the east to put to death the rebels. Therefore I am taking leave of thee." Hereupon Yamato, Haim no Mikoto, took the sword Kusanagi and gave it to Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, saying, "Be cautious and yet not remiss." This year Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, first reached Suruga. The brigands of this place made a show of obedience and said, deceivingly, "On this moor there are large deer in very great plenty. Their breath is like the morning mist, their legs are like a dense wood. Do thou go and hunt them." Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, believed these words, and going into the middle of the moor, sought for game. The brigands, desiring to kill the prince, set fire to the moor. But the prince, seeing that he had been deceived, produced fire by means of a fire, drill, and kindling a counter fire, succeeded in making his escape. One version says, the sword Mura, Kumo, which the prince wore, wielded itself and mowed away the herbage near the prince, thus enabling him to escape. Therefore that sword was called Kusanagi. The prince said, "I was almost betrayed." So he burnt all that robber band and exterminated them. Therefore that place was called Yaketsu. Next he marched on to Sagami, whence he desired to proceed to Kadzusa. Looking over the sea, he spake with a loud voice and said, "This is but a little sea, one might even jump over it." But when he came to the middle of the sea, a storm suddenly arose, and the prince's ship was tossed about, so that he could not cross over. At this time there was a concubine in the prince's suite, named Odo Takebana, Haim. She was the daughter of Ashiyama, no Sukyun of the Hatsumi house. She addressed the prince, saying, "This present uprising of the winds and rushing of the waves, so that the prince's ship is like to sink, must be due to the wishes of the god of the sea. I pray thee let me go into the sea, and so let the person of thy mean handmaiden be given to redeem the life of the Prince Augustness." Having finished speaking, she plunged into the billows. The storm forthwith ceased, and the ship was enabled to reach the shore. Therefore the people of that time called that sea Hashiri, Midzu. Hereupon Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, going by way of Kadzusa, changed his route, and entered the land of Michai no Oku. At this time, a great mirror was hung upon the prince's ship. Proceeding by the sea route, he went round to Ashi no Yura, and crossed aslant to Tama no Yura. When he arrived at the Yamishi frontier, the chiefs of the Yamishi, Shima, Tsu, Kami, and Kuni, Tsu, Kami, encamped at the harbor of Take, with the intention of making resistance. But when they saw the prince's ship from afar, they feared his majesty and power, and knew in their hearts that they could not gain the victory over him. They all flung away their bows and arrows, bowed down towards him, and said, "When we look upon thy face, we see that it is more than human. Art thou perchance a deity? We desire to know thy name." The prince answered and said, "I am the son of a deity of visible men." Hereupon the Yamishi were all filled with awe. They gathered up their skirts and, plunging into the waves, of their own accord, assisted the prince's ship to reach the shore. Then, with their hands bound behind them, they submitted themselves for punishment. He therefore pardoned their offense, and having made prisoners their chieftains, caused them to be his personal attendants. The Yamishi having been subdued, he returned from the country of Hitakami, and proceeding to the south-west, passed through Hitachi, and arrived at the land of Kahai, where he dwelt in the palace of Sakawari. At this time, a light was kindled, and he partook of food. On this night he made a song, in which he inquired of those in attendance on him, saying, "Since I passed Tsukuba and Nayabari, how many nights have I slept?" None of his attendants was able to answer him. Now there was a man who had charge of the lights, who made a song in continuation of the prince, saying, "Counting the days, of nights there are 9 nights, of days there are 10 days." Therefore the prince commended his intelligence and liberally rewarded him. Now while he was residing in this palace, he granted to take Hai, the ancestor of the Ohatomo no Muraji, the Yuki-bi. Thereupon Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, said, "All the wicked chiefs of the Yamishi have submitted to the punishment of their crimes. Only in the land of Shinano and the land of Koshi, there are a considerable number who are not yet obedient to the civilizing influence." So from Kahai he turned towards the north, and passing through Musashi and Kadzuke, he went westward as far as the Yuzuhi, Saka. Now Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, always thought with regret of Odo Takebana, Haim. Therefore, when he ascended to the summit of Yuzuhi and looked down towards the southeast, he sighed 3 times and said, "Alas, my wife!" Therefore the provinces east of the mountains were given the name of Idzuma. Here he sent Kibai no Takehiko by a different road to the land of Koshi, and caused him to examine the character of the country as regards means of access, and also whether the people were tractable or not. So Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, advanced into the province of Shinano. This is a land of high mountains and profound valleys. Verdant summits are piled up 10,000-fold, so that for men with staff in hand, they are hard to ascend. The cliffs are precipitous and are girt with flying bridges. Many thousand are the hill ranges, where even with slackened reins the horse makes no progress. Yet Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, bursting through the smoke and braving the mists, distantly crossed Mount Oho-yama. He had already reached the summit when he became hungry and had food on the mountain. The god of the mountain plagued the prince. He assumed the form of a white deer and stood before him. The prince, wondering at this, took a stick of garlic and jerked it at the white deer, striking it in the eye and killing it. Here the prince suddenly lost his way and could find no issue. Then a white dog came of its own accord and made a show of guiding the prince. Following the dog, he proceeded on his way and succeeded in coming out into Mino. Kibai no Take, Keikō, coming out from Koshi, met him. Before this, when anyone crossed the Shinano Pass, he inhaled so much of the breath of the deity that he became ill and lay down. But after the white deer was killed, the travelers who crossed that mountain chewed garlic and, smearing with it men, kine, and horses, preserved them from being affected by the deity breath. Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, having returned back again to Ohari, straightway took to wife a daughter of the Ohari house by name Miyazu, Haim, and tarried there until the next month. Here he heard that on Mount Ibuki and Afumi there was a savage deity. So he took off his sword, and leaving it in the house of Miyazu, Haim went on afoot. When he arrived at Mount Ibuki, the god of the mountain took the shape of a great serpent and posted himself on the road. Hereupon Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, not knowing that it was the master god who had become a serpent, said to himself, "This serpent must be the savage deity messenger. Having already slain a master god, is a messenger worth hunting after?" Accordingly, he strode over the serpent and passed on. Then the god of the mountain raised up the clouds and made an icy rain to fall. The tops of the hills became covered with mist, and the valleys involved in gloom. There was no path which he could follow. He was checked and knew not whither to turn his steps. However, braving the mist, he forced his way onwards and barely succeeded in finding an issue. He was still beside himself, like a drunken man. He therefore sat down beside a spring at the foot of the mountain, and, having drunk of the water, recovered his senses. Therefore that spring was called the same spring. It was at this time that Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, first became ill. The disease gradually increased, and he returned to Ohari. Here he did not enter the house of Miyazu, Haim, but passed on to Ise and reached Atsu. Formerly, in the year when Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, was proceeding eastwards, he halted on the shore at Atsu and partook of food. At that time, he took off a sword which he laid down at the foot of a fir tree. Eventually, he went away forgetting it. When he now came to this place, the sword was still there. Therefore he made a song, saying, "O thou single pine tree, that art right opposite to Ohari, me thou single pine tree. If thou wert a man, garments I would clothe thee with, a sword I would gird on thee." When he came to the moor of Nobo, his sufferings became very severe. So he made an offering of the Yamishi, whom he had captured, to the shrine of the god. He therefore sent Kibai no Take, Keikō, to report to the emperor, saying, "Thy servant, having received the command of the celestial court, undertook a distant expedition to the wilds of the east, where by the favor of the gods, and trusting in the mighty power of the emperor, I made the rebellious to submit themselves for punishment, and the violent deities to become moderate. Therefore I rolled up my armor, laid aside my weapons, and was returning peacefully. It was my hope, on such a day at such an hour, to report my mission to the celestial court. But the life allotted me by heaven has unexpectedly approached an end. Passing swiftly as a horse carriage passes a crack in the road, it may not be stayed. Alone I lay me down on the waste moor, with none to say a word to me. But why should I regret the loss of this body? My only grief is that I cannot meet thee." Having said so, he died on the moor of Nobo. He was then 30 years of age. When the emperor heard it, he could not sleep peacefully on his couch, nor was the taste of food sweet to him. Night and day, his voice was choked with grief. With tears and lamentations, he beat his breast. Therefore he exclaimed aloud, saying, "Oh, our son, Prince Wo Yuzu." Formerly, when the Kumaso revolted, he was still a boy. But for a long time, he bore the labor of campaigning. Afterwards, he was constantly at our side, supplying our deficiencies. Then, when the troubles with the eastern savages arose, there was no one else whom we could send to smite them. So, in spite of our affection for him, we sent him into the country of the enemy. No day passed that we did not think of him. Therefore, morning and evening, we longingly awaited the day of his return. Oh, what a calamity! Oh, what a crime! While we least expected it, we suddenly lost our child. Henceforth, with whom to help us shall we manage the vast institution? So he commanded his ministers, and through them instructed the functionaries to bury him in the Misasagi of Nobo Moor in the land of Ise. Now Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, taking the shape of a white bird, came forth from the Misasagi and flew towards the land of Yamato. The ministers accordingly opened the coffin, and looking in, saw that only the empty clothing remained, and that there was no corpse. Thereupon messengers were sent to follow in search of the white bird. It stopped on the plain of Kotabiki in Yamato. Accordingly, in that place, a Misasagi was erected. The white bird flew on again until it reached Kahachi, where it rested in the village of Furuchi, and in this place also a Misasagi was erected. Therefore the men of that day called these three Misasagi the White Bird Misasagi. At last it soared aloft to heaven, and there was nothing buried but his clothing and official cap. The emperor, wishing to perpetuate the fame of his services, established the Takeru-bi. This was in the 43rd year of the emperor reign. AD 121. 51st year, spring, 1st month, 7th day. The emperor summoned his ministers and feasted them for several days. Now the imperial Prince Waka, Tarashi, Hiko no Mikoto, and Takeshai no Sukyun did not come to the banqueting court. The emperor sent for them and asked the reason. Therefore they represented to the emperor, saying, "On a day of festival, the ministers and functionaries must have their minds bent on jollity, and they do not think of the state. In view of the possibility of there being madmen, who might watch for an unprotected space in the ramparts, we remain on guard beneath the gate and provide against emergencies." Then the emperor spake and said, "Splendid." So he showed them an extraordinary affection. Autumn, 8th month, 4th day. Waka, Tarashi, Hiko no Mikoto was appointed Prince Imperial. On this day Takeshai no Sukyun was appointed Prime Minister. The cross sword Kusanagi, which was at first worn by Yamato, Dake no Mikoto, is now in the shrine of Atsuda in the district of Yachi, in the province of Ohari. Now the Yamishi who had been presented to the shrine brawled day and night, and were disrespectful in their goings out and comings in. Then Yamato, Haim no Mikoto, said, "These Yamishi should not be allowed near the shrine." Accordingly, she sent them up to the court, where they were made to settle beside Mount Mamaro. Ere long, they cut down all the trees of the sacred mountain. They shouted and bawled in the neighboring villages and threatened the people. The emperor, hearing this, summoned his ministers and said, "The Yamishi who were placed beside the sacred mountain have by nature the hearts of beasts. They cannot be allowed to dwell in the inner country." So he caused them to be stationed without the home provinces, in any places which they pleased. They were the ancestors of the present Saheki B of the 5 provinces of Harima, Sanuki, Iyo, Aki, and Aha. In the beginning Yamato, Dake no Mikoto took the imperial princess Futachi, Iri, Haim, and made her his consort. She bore Prince Inuyori, Wake, next the Emperor Tarashi Nakatsu, Hiko, next Nuno Oshi Iri, Haim no Mikoto, and next Prince Waka take. The eldest of these, Prince Inayori, Wake, was the first ancestor of the two families of the Kimi of Inu-Gami and of the Kimi of Take. Another consort, named Kibai no Anato no Take, Haim, daughter of Kibai no Take, Hiko, bore to him Prince Take Miko and Prince Towoki Wake. The elder of these, Prince Take Miko, was the first ancestor of the Kimi of Aya in Sanuki. Prince Towoki Wake was the first ancestor of the Kimi of Wake in Iyo. His next consort, Odo Takebana Haim, daughter of Ashiyama no Sukyun of the Hatsumi house, bore to him Prince Waka Take Hiko. AD 122. 52nd year, summer 5th month 4th day. The Empress Harima no Oho, Iratsum died. Autumn, 7th month 7th day. Yasaka, Iri, Haim no Mikoto was appointed empress. AD 123. 53rd year, autumn, 8th month 1st day. The emperor commanded his ministers, saying, "When will our longing for our son cease? We desire to make a tour of inspection to the regions subdued by Prince Wo, Yuzu." In this month, he mounted into his carriage and made a progress to Ise, where, turning aside, he entered the East Sea provinces. Winter, 10th month. He arrived at the province of Kadzusa, whence by the sea route he crossed over to the harbor of Aha. At this time, the emperor, hearing the cry of a fish hawk, wished to see the bird form. So he went out upon the sea in search of it, and caught clams. Hereupon the ancestor of the Kashihade no Omi, by name Ihaka Matsukari, made shoulder straps of bulrushes, and preparing a hash of the clams, put it before the emperor. Therefore he commended the service rendered by the Omi Ihaka Matsukari, and granted him the steward's Ohatomo B. 12th month. The emperor returned from the eastern country, and dwelt in Ise. This was called the Kambata Palace. AD 124. 54th year, autumn, 9th month, 19th day. From Ise, the emperor returned to Yamato, and dwelt in the palace of Makamuku. AD 125. 55th year, spring, 2nd month, 5th day. Prince Hiko, Sa-jima was appointed governor, general of the 15 provinces of the To, San, Do. He was a grandson of Toyoki no Mikoto. But when he arrived at the village of Anashi in Kasuga, he fell ill and died. At this time, the people of the eastern land, grieved that the prince did not arrive, secretly purloined his body and buried it in the land of Kodzuk. AD 126. 56th year, autumn, 8th month. The emperor commanded Prince Momoro Wake, saying, "Thy father, Prince Hiko, Sajima, was unable to proceed to his governorship and died prematurely. Therefore do thou undertake the absolute rule of the eastern land." So Momoro, Wake no Mikoto, having received the emperor commands, and being also desirous of accomplishing his father work, straightway proceeded thither and undertook the government. He had already attained to a good administration when the Yamishi made a disturbance. So he raised an army and attacked them. Then the Yamishi chieftains, Ashi Fury, He Oho, Ha Fury, He and Tohatsu Kura, Ho, he bowed their heads to the ground and came. They made deep obeisance and accepted punishment, offering him all their territory without exception. Therefore he pardoned those who surrendered, and put to death those who would not submit. On this account, the eastern land was for a long time free from trouble. Therefore his descendants are to this day in the eastern land. AD 127. 57th year, autumn, 9th month. The pool of Sakate was constructed, and the embankment planted with bamboos. Winter, 10th month. It was commanded that every province should erect granaries of the laborers' bee. AD 128. 58th year, spring, 2nd month, 11th day. The emperor made a progress to the land of Ohomi and dwelt in Shiga for 3 years. This was called the Palace of Taka, Enoho. AD 130. 60th year, winter, 11th month, 7th day. The emperor died in the Palace of Taka, Enoho, at the age of 106. The emperor Hiko. The emperor Waka, Terashi. Hiko was the 4th child of the emperor Oho, Terashi. Hiko, Ashiro, Wake. The name of the empress, his mother, was Saka, Iri. Haim no Mikoto, daughter of the imperial prince Saka, Iri. Hiko. He was appointed Prince Imperial in the 46th year of the Emperor Oho, Terashi. Hiko, being then aged 24 years. In the 60th year of his reign, winter, the 11th month, the Emperor Oho, Terashi, Hiko died. AD 131. First year, spring, 1st month, 5th day. The Prince Imperial assumed the imperial dignity. This year was the year Kanoto Hitsuji of the cycle. AD 132. Second year, winter, 11th month, 10th day. The Emperor Oho, Terashi, Hiko was buried in the Misasagi over the road at Yamanobe in the province of Yamato. The Empress was honored with the title of Grand Empress. AD 133. Third year, spring, 1st month, 7th day. Takeshi no Sukyun was made prime minister. In the beginning, the emperor was born on the same day with Takeshi no Sukyun, and he therefore had an extraordinary affection for him. AD 134. Fourth year, spring, 2nd month, 1st day. The emperor commanded, saying, "Our predecessor on the throne, the Emperor Oho Terashi, Hiko, was clear, sighted, and of divine valor. When he became subject to the scheme and received over the plan, he ruled heaven and was in accordance with man. He swept away the banditti and restored right. His virtue was like a canopy, his path harmonized with development. Therefore, in all the land under universal heaven there was none who did not recognize him as sovereign. Of all things endowed with life and possessed of soul, were there any which did not find their place? We have now succeeded him in the occupation of the precious felicity. Morning and night we tremble and fear. But the people are like wriggling worms and will not reform the savagery of their hearts. In the provinces and districts there are no lords. In the villages there are no chiefs. Henceforward let there be established lords in the provinces, and let there be chiefs placed in the villages. Accordingly, let men of ability of the provinces be taken and appointed chiefs over provinces and districts, so as to form a defense for the inner country." AD 135. Fifth year, autumn, 9th month. A decree was issued to all the provinces establishing miyako in the provinces and districts, and inaki in the villages. All were granted shields and spears as emblems of authority. So the mountains and rivers were made boundaries for the separation of one province and district from another, whilst the bounds of townships and villages were established by means of lanes. In this way, east and west were reckoned as in a line with the sun, while north and south were reckoned as athwart the sun. The sunny side of the mountains was called the light face, and the shady side of the mountains the back face. In this way, the people had tranquil possession of their dwellings, and the empire was at peace. AD 178. 48th year, spring, 3rd month, 1st day. The emperor appointed his nephew Terashi, Naka, Su, Hiko no Mikoto Prince Imperial. AD 190. 60th year, summer, 6th month, 11th day. The emperor died, aged 107. B Nihongi, The Chronicles of Japan, Chapter 8. The Emperor, Tarshi and Akatsuichiko. The Emperor Tarashi, Nakatsu, Hiko was the second child of Yamato Takeru no Mikoto. The Empress, his mother, was called Futachi, Iri, Haim no Mikoto. She was the daughter of the Emperor Ikyum, Iri, Hiko Asachi. The Emperor countenance was of perfect beauty, and his stature was 10 feet. He was appointed Prince Imperial in the 48th year of the Emperor Waka, Tarashi, Hiko, being at this time 31 years of age. The Emperor Waka, Tarashi, Hiko, having no male offspring, appointed him as his successor. In the 60th year of his reign, the emperor died, and in the following year, autumn, the 9th month, 6th day, was buried in the Tatanami Misasagi in Saki, in the province of Yamato. AD 192. First year, spring, 1st month, 11th day. The Prince Imperial assumed the imperial dignity. Autumn, 9th month, 1st day. The Empress, mother, was granted the honorary title of Grand Empress. Winter, 11th month, 1st day. The Emperor commanded his ministers, saying, "The Prince, our father, died before we reached the status of a youth. His divine spirit became changed into a white bird and ascended to heaven. Our longing regard for him knows not a day intermission. Therefore, it is our wish to procure white birds and to keep them in the pond within the precincts of the Misasagi, so that, looking on these birds, we may comfort our feelings of longing." Orders were therefore sent to the various provinces to send tribute of white birds. Intercalary 11th month, 4th day. The province of Koshi sent tribute of 4 white birds. Now the messengers who were sent with the birds stayed for the night on the bank of the river Uji. Then Prince Gama wake of Ashigami, seeing the white birds, made inquiries, saying, "Whither are you taking these white birds?" The men of Koshi answered and said, "The emperor, out of his longing for the prince, his father, intends to keep them as pets. Therefore do we bring them as tribute." Prince Gama wake spake to the men of Koshi, saying, "These may be white birds, but when they are roasted they will become black birds." So he forcibly seized the white birds and carried them away. Hereupon the men of Koshi came and reported to the emperor, who was indignant at the affront offered by Prince Gama wake to the late prince, and sending troops, put him to death. Prince Gama wake was the younger brother of the emperor by a different mother. The people of that time said, "A father is heaven, an elder brother is a lord. How can he escape execution who is wanting in respect to heaven and who thwarts his lord?" This year was the year Midzunoi Saru of the cycle. AD 193. Second year, spring, 1st month, 11th day. Oki Naga Tarashi, Haim, was appointed empress. Before this, the emperor had taken to him as consort Oho, Nakatsu, Haim, daughter of his uncle Hiko, Bido Ohain. She bore to him the imperial prince Kakasaka and the imperial prince Ashikuma. Next he took to him as consort Odo, Haim, daughter of Oho Saka, Nushi, the ancestor of the Miyako of Kyukyumata. She bore to him the imperial prince Hamuya Wake. Second month, 6th day. The emperor made a progress to Tsunoga, where he erected a temporary palace and dwelt in it. This was called the Palace of Kei. In the same month, the granary of Ahaji was established. Third month, 15th day. The emperor made a tour of inspection to the southern provinces. Hereupon he left behind the empress and the functionaries, and with 2 or 3 high officials and several hundred officers in attendance, he proceeded, thus lightly equipped, as far as the land of Ki, where he dwelt in the palace of Takuratsu. At this time, the Kumaso rebelled and did not bring tribute. The emperor thereupon prepared to smite the land of Kumaso, and starting from Takuratsu, borne over the sea, he made a progress to Anato. On the same day he sent messengers to Tsunoga and commanded the empress, saying, "Set out straightway from that harbor and meet me at Anato. Summer, 6th month, 10th day." The emperor anchored in the harbor of Toyora, while the empress, who had set out from Tsunoga on her way there, arrived at the Strait of Nuda and partook of food on board her ship. A great many Tahai assembled beside the ship. The empress sprinkled sake upon the Tahai, which forthwith became drunk and floated to the surface. Then the fishermen, having caught numbers of these Tahai, were delighted and said, "They are the fish given us by our wise sovereign." Therefore the fish of that place, when the 6th month comes, are in the habit of floating belly upwards as if they were drunk. This was the origin of it. Autumn, 7th month, 5th day. The empress anchored in the harbor of Toyora. On this day the empress found in the sea a night pearl. 9th month. The emperor erected a palace in Anato and dwelt in it. It was called the Palace of Toyora in Anato. AD 199. 8th year, spring, 1st month, 4th day. The emperor proceeded to Tsukashi. At this time Kuma, Wani, the ancestor of the Agata, Nushi of Oka, hearing of the emperor arrival, pulled up beforehand a 500-branched sakaki tree, which he set up on the bows of a 9-fathom ship. On the upper branches he hung a white copper mirror, on the middle branches he hung a 10-span sword, and on the lower branches he hung Yasaka jewels. With these he went out to meet him at the bay of Saha in Suwo, and presented to him a fish, salt, place. In doing so, he addressed the emperor, saying, "Let the great ferry from Anato to Mukitsuno be its eastern gate, and the great ferry of Nagoya be its western gate. Let the islands of Modori and Abe and none else be the august baskets. Let the island of Shiba be divided and made the august pans. Let the sea of Sakami be the salt place." He then acted as the emperor pilot. Going round Cape Yamaga, he entered the Bay of Oka. But in entering the harbor, the ship was unable to go forward. So he inquired of Kumawani, saying, "We have heard that thou, Kumawani, hast come to us with an honest heart. Why does the ship not proceed?" Kumawani addressed the emperor, saying, "It is not the fault of thy servant that the august ship is unable to advance. At the entrance to this bay there are 2 deities, one male and the other female. The male deity is called Oho, Kura, Nushi. The female deity is called Tsubura Haim. It must be owing to the wish of these deities." The emperor accordingly prayed to them and caused them to be sacrificed to, appointing his steersman Iga, Hiko, a man of Yuda in the province of Yamato, as priest. So the ship was enabled to proceed. The empress entered in a different ship by the Sea of Kuki. As the tide was out, she was unable to go on. Then Wani went back and met the empress by way of Kuki. Thereupon he saw that the august ship made no progress, and he was afraid. He hastily made a fish pond and a bird pond, into which he collected all the fishes and birds. When the empress saw these fishes and birds sporting, her anger was gradually appeased, and with the flowing tide she straightway anchored in the harbor of Oka. Moreover, Idote, the ancestor of the Agata, Nushi of Edo in Tsukashi, hearing of the emperor coming, pulled up sakaki trees of 500 branches, which he set up in the bow and stern of his ship. On the upper branches he hung Yasaka jewels, on the middle branches white, copper mirrors, and on the lower branches 10 span swords, and coming to meet the emperor at Hikeshima in Anato, presented them to him. In doing so, he addressed the emperor, saying, "As to these things which thy servant dares to offer, mayst thou govern the universe with subtlety tortuous as the curvings of the Yasaka jewels. May thy glance survey mountain, stream and sea, plain bright as the mirror of white copper. Mayst thou, wielding this 10-span sword, maintain peace in the empire." Thereupon the emperor commended Idote and called him Isoshi. Wherefore the men of that time called the native place of Idote the land of Iso. The present name, Ito is a corruption of this. 22nd day. The emperor arrived in the district of Naka. Here he dwelt in the palace of Kashihi. Autumn, 9th month, 5th day. The emperor addressed his ministers and consulted with them as to attacking the Kumaso. At this time, a certain god inspired the empress and instructed her, saying, "Why should the emperor be troubled because the Kumaso do not yield submission? It is a land wanting in backbone. Is it worth while raising an army to attack it? There is a better land than this, a land of treasure, which may be compared to the aspect of a beautiful woman, the land of Mukatsu, dazzling to the eyes. In that land, there are gold and silver and bright colors in plenty. It is called the land of Scylla, of the coverlets of paper, mulberry. If thou worshipest me aright, that land will assuredly yield submission freely, and the edge of thy sword shall not at all be stained with blood. Afterwards the Kumaso will surrender. In worshipping me, let these things be given as offerings, namely, the Emperor August ship and the water fields called Ohoda, presented to him by Hamutachi, the Ata of Anato. When the emperor heard the words of the god, his mind was filled with doubt, and straightway ascending a high hill, he looked away into the distance. But far and wide there was the ocean, and he saw no land. Hereupon the emperor answered the god and said, "We have looked all around, and there is sea and no land. Can there be a country in the great void? Who is the god who cheats us with vain illusions? Moreover, all the emperors our ancestors have worshipped the gods of heaven and earth without exception, and none has been omitted." Then the god again spake by the mouth of the empress, saying, "I see this country lie outstretched like a reflection from heaven in the water. Why sayest thou that there is no country, and dost disparage my words? But as thou, O king, hast spoken thus, and hast utterly refused to believe me, thou shalt not possess this land. The child with which the empress has just become pregnant, he shall obtain it." The emperor, however, was still incredulous, and persisted in attacking the Kumaso. But he retreated without having gained a victory. AD 200. 9th year, spring, 2nd month, 5th day. The emperor took suddenly ill, and died on the following day at the age of 52. One version says, the emperor, having gone in person to smite the Kumaso, was hit by an enemy arrow and slain. Thereupon the empress and the prime minister Takeshi no Sukyun suppressed the mourning for the emperor, and did not allow it to be known to the empire. Accordingly, the empress commanded the prime minister, the Nakatomi Akatsu no Muraji, Oho, Miwa no Ohatomo, Nashi no Kimi, Mononobe no Akuhi no Muraji, and Ohatomo no Tekematsu no Muraji, saying, "The empire is still ignorant of the emperor decease. If the people were to know of it, there would be negligence." So she instructed the 4 high officials to cause the functionaries to keep watch within the palace, while the body of the emperor was secretly taken up and entrusted to Takeshi no Sukyun. He removed it by sea to Anato, and buried it temporarily in the palace of Toyora, giving it a fireless temporary burial. 22nd day. The prime minister, Takeshi no Sukyun, returned from Anato and made his report to the empress. This year, owing to the expedition against Scylla, it was impossible to bury the emperor. B.